Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Fairy Tale. Start to capture the Fairy Queen Erza. Chapter 21. I see. Yuen nodded slightly, since Gildas believed that President Makarov was fine. Then he won't say any more. Gildas is obviously more experienced than him. Since Gildas said it was all right, it must be all right. In fact, the day was getting darker, and the time came to dusk very. Makarov hummed a ditty and returned to the guild alone. Makarov's face was a little flushed, and his steps were a little staggering. It looked like he had drunk too much. Egwene, Gildarth. The first time Makarov returned to the guild, he shouted loudly that he wanted to see Egwene and Gildas. "What are you doing, President?" Gildas, who was drunk at the bar, heard Makarov's shout, turned around, and looked at Makarov behind him. Gildas. Makarov frowned, staring at Gildas in front of him. President Makarov. Gildas also frowned. For a while, the atmosphere between Gildas and Makarov gradually became tense, and there seemed to be magical fluctuations around the two of them. "Hello, shouldn't there be a fight?" Yuen looked nervously at Gildas and Makarov, who were confronting each other. If Gildas and Makarov were to fight, then he was the only one in the guild who could stop the two of them. No, if it really doesn't work, Yuen is ready to ask Irene for help. After all, if two inhuman drunks fight, the entire guild and even the entire town of Magnolia will be completely destroyed, right? Boom. Just when Egwene was nervous, Makarov moved, and saw his arms stretched suddenly, hugging Gildas in his arms. Woo woo woo. Gildas, you really look good on me. How many years have passed, and I have finally been praised by the Senate. Makarov hugged Gildas and burst into tears. President Makarov. I still remember when we sat together, peeking at the bartender lady changing clothes, and vowed to make the guild bigger and stronger. Then call a group of beautiful young girls to the guild, and hold an underwear competition every year. Gildas put his arm around Makarov's shoulder, and began to recall the past with the help of alcohol. Gildas, you still remember that incident? It's really rare. I'm so relieved. Woo woo woo, Makarov said, and began to cry again. President. Gildas. Yuen silently looked at the two drunks who were hugging and crying after drinking too much, and was about to go home. Egwene. Just as Egwene was about to leave, he suddenly heard Makarov's call. What's the matter, President? Egwene turned to look at Makarov and asked. You must not secretly perform S-level missions. Even if you go to perform S-level missions, don't let me see you. Otherwise I can't spare you. Makarov looked at Egwene and roared loudly. Hee. After listening to Makarov's words, Yuen smiled, and he knew what Makarov meant. To put it simply, due to fairy tales rules that magisters below S-level are absolutely not allowed to perform S-level tasks, so Yuen, who has the strength above S-level, cannot perform S-level tasks. But this is theoretically impossible. Theoretically, it doesn't work, it means you can. Since Egwene will be criticized if she is seen by Makarov. So as long as Yuen is not seen by Makarov when she accepts the S-level mission, isn't it all right? I see, President. Egwene waved lightly at Makarov, turned and left the guild. How is this child, Egwene? After Yuen left, Makarov asked Gildas. Genius. Gildas thought for a while, and replied Makarov with two words indifferently. Sure enough, he is a good boy. Makarov nodded after hearing what Gildas said. Honestly, President, even if you give Yuen the S-level assessment alone in advance, it's not an exaggeration to award him the S-level title of Fairy Tale. He is fully qualified as an S-rank magister. The blush on Gildas's face seemed to have disappeared a lot, and he seemed to be a lot more awake. Of course I know about this kind of thing. Let's not talk about the guild's S-level magister qualifications, even the top 10 magisters, as long as Yuen wants to, she can definitely get it. But rules are rules. Makarov turned his head stubbornly. I really admire you. Hearing this, Gildas looked at Makarov helplessly. It was obvious that Makarov had granted Yuen the qualification to accept S-level missions, but he refused to give Yuen the title of S-level magister. It's just a false name, but Makarov took it unexpectedly seriously. It's not like that, it's just that I have basically broken all the rules set by the second generation. I think at least, don't break the assessment rules set by the first president. Otherwise, when Precto comes back one day, seeing the completely changed guild, he will definitely not be able to spare me, right? As Makarov spoke, Beads of sweat trickled down his forehead. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect you, President, to have someone you were afraid of. After hearing Makarov's words, Gildas laughed out loud. It's so noisy, brat. Makarov looked at the laughing Gildas, his expression froze, and then he knocked hard on Gildas' head. President, it hurts. Gildas stroked his swollen head and looked at Makarov with displeasure. Ha ha ha, this time it was Makarov who laughed. The other side, when Yuen came outside the guild and looked at the unfamiliar street in front of her, Yuen remembered that he didn't seem to know the way home at all. It's troublesome now. Yuen looked at the unfamiliar street and fell into deep thought. Brother Evan. Just as Yuen was deep in thought, a clear voice caught Yuen's attention. I saw a girl with crimson hair standing beside the street lamp. At this moment, the girl was thrusting her waist, saying hello to Yuen. Aluza. Yuen floated in front of the girl and called out her name. Really, since joining this guild, Brother Yuen has learned not to go home. Brother Yuen, are you going to become a bad man who is loose and doesn't go home? Erza put her hands on her waist, looked at Yuen aggressively, and preached. Ah, who did you listen to? After hearing what Erza said, Yuen was a little speechless, and he gently rubbed Erza's little head. Kana told me, she said, the beginning of a boy becoming bad is never going home. Erza answered Yuen's question. Yuen thought about it for a while, and he found that what Karna said was indeed reasonable. At least Gildas was absolutely scum, there was no doubt about it. The morning sun swayed on Egwene's face. Let him slowly open his eyes. Originally, Yuen felt a tightness in her chest, and thought it was a small animal like a kitten. It crawled in along the window, and then squeezed into his warm bed. After Yuen opened her eyes, she looked at the crimson man next to her. Long hair, only to find out that it was Erza. I saw Erza gently pressing her head on Yuen's chest, with her small mouth open, and there seemed to be a trace of crystal around her mouth. Yuen looked at Erza, who was sleeping soundly in front of her, feeling a little helpless. Probably Erza went back to the wrong room in a daze after going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Thinking of this, Yuen gently pulled her body out of Erza's arms, who looked like a kitten, then took off her pajamas, changed her clothes, and prepared to leave. When Egwene went downstairs, then I saw Ilya, Eden, and Ian who were cleaning the house. Good morning, Master Egwene. The three of them greeted Yuen respectfully after seeing Yuen coming down the stairs. Good morning. Yuen smiled slightly at the three of them, responded, and then walked into the living room. In the living room, Irene was crossing her beautiful legs, drinking black tea while flipping through the newspaper in her hand. There were a few fashion magazines and gossip newspapers in the magic world by Irene's hand. Egwene, how did you sleep last night? After seeing Yuen, Irene put down the newspaper and black tea in her hand, and smiled slightly at Yuen. I slept well, I don't really recognize the bed. Egwene answered Irene. Really, Erza hasn't slept well these days, and that girl still seems a little uncomfortable. She has been pestering me for the past few nights, asking me to tell her stories. As Irene spoke, a bit of helplessness appeared in her expression. Alusha is still young, after a while, it will be fine when she grows up. Yuen scratched her hair. In fact, thinking about it, Alusa is not too young. She is already 10 years old. In the original book, Alusa who was 10 years old has grown a lot. Is it because of his existence that Alusa slowed down? What about Shaw's growth? Yuen began to doubt herself. He was thinking about whether to reduce his help to Erza, and find a way to make Erza grow up completely on her own. Brother Evan, where did you go? Just when Yuen was thinking about whether she spoiled Erza a little too much, she opened her eyes and found that Yuen beside her had disappeared. Erza came downstairs. She looked around and kept calling Yuen's name. Miss Erza, Master Yuen is in the living room now. Ilya, who was cleaning the room with a broom, hurried over after hearing what Yuen said, and pointed the way for Erza. Brother Yuen is in the room. After hearing this, Erza stepped forward and walked into the living room. Aluza. Yuen turned around when she heard the voice, and then saw a little girl with messy long crimson hair and red eyes from crying, rushing towards him. Brother Yuen, I thought you left alone again. Erza rushed into Egwene's arms, tears streaming down her face. The strong Erza also has a soft side, and Yuen is the softness in Erza's heart. Alusa, she has been waiting for you to come back outside the guild these days except for meal time. At this time, Irene seemed to think of something to preach to Egwene. Forehead. It's my fault that I went out on a mission without telling you guys. I will stay for the next few days. Erza, who will accompany you, please don't cry. After hearing Irene's words, Yi Wen apologized first, then rubbed Ursha's little head, and comforted her softly. Okay. Erza stopped crying, and she nodded slightly to show that she understood. Let's eat first. After breakfast, I have something for you. Some missions are too dangerous, so it's not convenient for me to take you with me, but as long as Erza grows up, you can go with me on missions. Yi Wen stroked Ursha's head lightly. He was really worried, and took Ursha to carry out missions together. In order to become stronger, the missions he would do in the future were all S level, SS level, and even it is an ultra-high risk mission like a 10-year mission. Facing SS level or 10-year level tasks, Yi Wen felt that she would not be able to escape unscathed, let alone bring along Ursha, who is still very weak. In the original book, Mirage took the immature Lysina and Elfman to perform S-level missions, and the tragedy caused by the end was a wake-up call, so Egwene would not be arrogant enough to take other people to perform this kind of mission. High-risk tasks. I will become strong enough to be able to carry out missions with Brother Yi Wen. Erza clenched her fists. She knew in her heart that Yi Wen was doing her best. By the way, what is Eren planning to do next? After comforting Erza, Yi Wen suddenly remembered something, and asked while looking at Irene behind her. To be honest, with Irene's strength, it is possible to unify the continent of Ishgard. Even if all the 10 holy magisters are added together, they can only be instantly killed when they meet Irene. I plan to continue to open my bakery. As for the tasks of the guild, I don't want to do that kind of thing. Irene sipped the black tea lightly. She had already passed the age of excitement, and she didn't intend to get involved in the children's play. Keep running the bakery. It's really good. Because Irene's bread is really delicious. Yi Wen nodded. He grew up eating the bread made by Irene, and he has the most right to say about the taste of Irene's bread. Irene's bread is as good as Irene's strength, and it is the best in the mainland. As long as Irene's bread comes out, the bakery in the whole town will probably close down, right? But it won't. After all, Irene's bread has always been sold in limited quantities. As long as you like it. Irene showed a kind smile after hearing what Yi Wen said. The reason why she never tires of researching bread, even planting the raw materials of bread herself, and controlling the high standard of bread is precisely because Yi Wen loves to eat what she makes, bread. The entire bakery is only for Yi Wen and Ursha. The three quickly ate breakfast. Then, Egwene left the house with Ursha and came to the back mountain of Fairy Tale. With Yi Wen's efforts, it has recovered a lot, at least it doesn't look so messy. Give you. Egwene and Erza. After arriving at the mountain behind Fairy Tale, Egwene handed Erza a wooden sword. This is. Erza was taken aback with the wooden sword in her hand. Alusha, I'm going to teach you sword skills next. Egwene looked at Erza and spoke softly. Yi Wen planned to teach Alusa all the sword skills she had learned. Every time Yi Wen adds points, she doesn't gain strength directly. Apart from strength, she also gains corresponding experience in her mind. That is to say, his swordsmanship and physical skills can be taught to others. Are you ready? Egwene looked at Erza and asked softly. Okay. Erza holds the wooden sword in her hand, her eyes are firm. In the next second, Yi Wen's figure came to Ursha in an instant, holding the wooden sword in her hand and slashing towards Ursha. Ursha looked at Yi Wen, who was suddenly attacking her, and subconsciously picked up the wooden sword to block it. In an instant, the wooden swords in their hands touched each other, making a soft noise. I blocked Brother Yi Wen's sword. Erza's eyes lit up when she saw the attack she blocked. However, before Erza could think about it, Yi Wen's attacks landed one after another. After a while, there was a series of soft sounds in the woods on the back mountain. The swords of Ursha and Yi Wen kept colliding with each other, back and forth, making a soft noise. Of course, this does not mean that Alusa's strength has reached Egwene's level, but that Egwene is constantly feeding Alusa through battles so that Alusa can master her own swordsmanship in battle. It's been like this for about a week. Ursha's swordsmanship became more and more fierce, and in Yuwen's opinion, she had reached the level 3 or 4 of the system. It has to be said that Erza can reach this level in just 1 week. Her talent is undoubtedly at the genius level. Seeing Ursha possessing such an exaggerated talent, Yuwen felt a trace of curiosity in her heart. He was curious, if he attached the attribute of domineering to Ursha, could Ursha be able to master the ability of domineering? Thinking of this, Yuwen stopped the attack in her hand. Okay. Alusa, who was getting more and more excited as she fought more and more bravely, was stunned when she saw Yuwen withdraw the sword in her hand, and then looked at Yuwen with puzzled eyes. Alusa, I have something interesting for you. As Yuwen said, she used additional magic on Erza, add knowledge color, armed color, and overlord color. In an instant, streaks of golden light separated from Yuwen's body and enveloped Ursha's body. Successful. Yuwen looked at the rays of light and knew that her additional magic had succeeded. Moreover, Yuwen discovered that he could add the strength of domineering to Ursha at will, and even add all the domineering in his body to Ursha's body, but once he did so, his domineering level would be cleared, but you can still upgrade it back with funds. Yuwen didn't give Ursha too much power, he just consumed about 300,000 yuan of his own funds, and gave Ursha about 6 levels of 3-color domineering. What Yuwen expected was that Ursha, you can master these 3 kinds of domineering by yourself, and successfully raise the level of domineering. What is this feeling? Erza felt the arrogance in her body. Because Ursha doesn't have an attribute template, she can't know her strength level, she can only roughly estimate her own strength. Ursha vaguely feels that the current self can easily defeat her before. In just an instant, her strength jumped to a whole new level. My spirit, perception, all have been greatly improved. Erza closed her eyes tightly. She seemed to be able to hear the sound of a mosquito flapping its wings 100 meters away, and she could also sense an eagle flying over 1,000 meters above the sky. She could also sense that 2 monsters were competing for territory 3 kilometers away. Everything became extremely clear under her perception. With the blessing of domineering, Erza even felt as if she had re-recognized the world. And right now Yuwen is also studying her own abilities. After he successfully added arrogance to Erza, he had an idea in his heart. Simply put, he can use his own ability to create an entire army with super strength. Moreover, to upgrade to level 6, which is about the ability of an S-level magister, he only needs to consume more than 100,000 yuan of funds, which is just a drop in the bucket for him. As long as he accumulates hundreds of millions of funds, he, Yuwen, can create an army of S-rank mages with thousands of people. Well, in the original book, Irene added to all the soldiers of the Western continent, turning everyone into berserkers, and everyone has good strength. However, although these soldiers are very strong, they are still useless in the face of the real strong. Thinking of this, Yuwen stopped thinking about creating powerful soldiers. Think about the fact that he just created thousands of soldiers, and then all of them died with a flat A from the Magic King, thanks to that. How is Elsa feeling? Yuwen shook her head, stopped thinking about these unrealistic and extremely inefficient ideas, and asked Erza. I feel that I am stronger now. Erza slowly opened her eyes, stopped feeling all things in nature, and replied to Yuwen at the same time. Then continue. Yuwen ticked her fingers provocatively at Erza. It is good. As Ursha said, her body came in front of Yuwen in an instant, and the wooden sword in her hand was covered with a layer of dark-armed domineering. Well done. Yuwen looked at Ursha, who had mastered the entanglement of the armed color, with a smile on her lips, and the wooden sword in his hand was also entwined with a layer of jet-black domineering. When the wooden swords of the two collided together, they were instantly domineering. Then, the two added domineering into the battle, and the battle between the two rose to a new level in an instant. Rocks, trees, can no longer stop the collision between the two wooden swords. All kinds of flying sand and rocks were constantly being blasted into the sky by the impact of the battle between Yuwen and Erza. A sword cannot keep up with my brother's footsteps. Seeing that Yuwen always held a sword with one hand, she could block her who was holding a sword with 2 hands, and a thought suddenly came to her mind. I need more weapons. Erza thought so, and took out her second wooden sword. Second sword style. Egwin felt a little amused looking at Erza holding a sword in both hands. Okay, if one sword can't catch up with brother, then use 2 swords. If 2 swords are still not enough, then 3, if not enough, then 4. Erza looked at Yuan and spoke like this. Then let's try it. See if your quantity can beat my quality. As Yuan said, holding the sword with one hand, she slashed towards Erza. It is good. Erza held a wooden sword in each of her left and right hands, and at the same time attached a dark-armed domineering color to the two wooden swords, and slashed towards Yuan. Boom! The moment the wooden swords in the hands of the two touched together, they were domineering. Time flies. A few months passed by in a hurry. Time came to August, the end of summer, everything grows luxuriantly. Okay, let's come here today. After Fairy Tale, Egwene stopped teaching Alusha. To be honest, at this point, Egwene has nothing to teach Alusha. With Alusa's super talent, in just a few months, she raised her swordsmanship level to around level 5 to level 6 judged by Yuan's system. This made Yuan feel very emotional. Without the help of the system, he probably would not be able to improve his swordsmanship to the 5th or 6th level in his lifetime. As expected of Erin, who inherited Irene's terrifying talent, she is really a monster. However, when she thought about how in the original book, after awakening her magic power, Erza relied on her own talent to successfully become a Fairy Tale S-rank magister in only 3 or 4 years, and Egwene also understood. Call. While panting heavily, Erza gently wiped off the sweat on her head. Her current domineering manipulation is becoming more and more skillful, and her sword skills are becoming more and more fierce. Even the profound meaning of flying and slashing has been completely mastered, but even in this way, she still couldn't defeat Yuan, and she couldn't even catch up with Yuan's figure, which made Erza a little distressed. In Erza's eyes, if she couldn't catch up with Yuan, she couldn't carry out the mission with Yuan. In short, Erza, until now, I have nothing to teach you. The next practice is up to you. Whether it is the improvement of magic power, or the practice of domineering and swordsmanship, what will you do in the future? What level you reach depends on how high your heart is. Egwene looked at Erza and spoke softly. For nearly 3 months, he successfully helped Erza improve her sword skills, but there was still no progress in domineering. This made Yuan somewhat suspect that there was something wrong with his teaching level. Or, domineering, a special ability that does not belong to this world, although it can be added to other people through his additional magic, but it can only be added after all. The additional level will be fixed at that level, and will not continue to increase the level. If it's the former, then it's okay. Yuan can only complain that her teacher talent is far inferior to Teacher Kai and Teacher Ka. But if it's the latter, then there will be big troubles. Egwene doesn't know whether it is right or wrong to attach a power that cannot be improved to Erza's body. But Egwene still has a backup. Even if the power of domineering and magic cannot be improved through practice in this world, Yuan can wait until the funds become rich and forcefully empower Alusa. But this is the last resort. Yuan still hopes that Erza can improve her arrogance through practice. In fact, even if the ability of domineering can be improved by adding it in the practice of the person being added, Yuan does not intend to add this ability to too many people, because the mainstream power in this world is still magic. In Yuan's opinion, it is not worth the loss if she gives up magic and practice domineering. And the reason why Yuan attached domineering to Erza is because Erza's magic dress-up knight does not require practice. Whether the dress-up magic is strong or not depends mainly on what kind of armor Erza is wearing, and the stronger the armor, the stronger Erza is. Erza's main means of attack are swordsmanship and physical skills, so Erza can do it completely. Domineering, swordsmanship, and magic can be practiced without delay. Anyway, Erza's magic is mainly to collect equipment and improve strength. Therefore, Erza can achieve the perfect compatibility of magic and domineering, as well as swordsmanship, and even fruit abilities. This kind of compatibility cannot be achieved by other people. Speaking of devil fruit, Yuan originally wanted to try to attach her own devil fruit ability to Erza, but he failed. Yuan found that if she wanted to give the ability of the devil fruit to others, she had to completely separate the devil fruit in her body and become a complete fruit, and then let other people eat the fruit. Thinking of this, Yuan gave up. Originally, he planned to take advantage of the bug that ordinary people cannot eat 2 devil fruits with the additional magic card, but unfortunately he couldn't get rid of the bug. Brother Yuan, are you going to continue the mission again? After Erza was silent for a long time, she pursed her lips, looked at Yuan and asked. After all, we are the magisters of Fairy Tale. As magisters, how can we not perform tasks all the time? Yuan smiled slightly, then rubbed Erza's little head. Okay, brother Yuan, go and carry out the mission. I will work hard to carry out the task. After all, I am also the magister of fairy tale. When brother Yuan comes back, my strength will not be what it used to be. I will definitely surprise brother Yuan. Erza nodded, and watched Yuan speak seriously. Okay, then we have made an agreement. When I come back next time, Erza will definitely surprise me. Yuan looked at Erza's serious and cute face, smiled and nodded. Yeah, I will. Erza nodded lightly, silently making up her mind. I must make myself stronger than I am now, and I must catch up with brother Yuan. I'm waiting for you. Yuan gently stroked Erza's little head again. Then, Egwene sent Erza back home, bid farewell to Irene, and returned to the fairy tale guild alone. Everyone in the guild is still chatting and farting like before. Yuan didn't make too much noise. After all, he was a low-key person. Yuan looked around casually for a week, and found that the president and guildas were not there, so she went directly to the mission board, ready to choose some missions suitable for her. He first came to the general task board. The tasks in it are tasks that most magisters can complete. Many tasks have no task level. In fact, except for S-level tasks, or tasks above S-level, task level the division of tasks is not clear, but Yuan's system has its own set of review standards, which divides these tasks into A-level, B-level, all the way to E-level and other tasks. Sure enough, there is no task I want. Yuan casually glanced at the quests on the common quest board. Most of them were low-level quests without combat and danger. Yuan didn't intend to complete these time-consuming tasks, so she got up and prepared to go to the S-level task board on the second floor, trying her luck. Egwene, you're back. Just as Yuan was about to leave, his sense of knowledge suddenly gave an alarm. Is it Lacuzes? Yuan turned around and looked outside the guild. Outside the gate of the fairy tale guild, a blonde boy who looked about 13 or 14 years old was putting his hands in his pockets, preparing to return to the guild. Yes, the person who came was Lacuzes, who had just completed the mission. These days, he had been accepting crusade missions and eliminated many monsters, just to hone his strength until he could defeat Yuan. If Lacuzes sees it, it will be very troublesome. Yuan said to herself, so I'm sorry Lacuzes, you should not come in until I choose the mission. Following Egwene's voice fell, a huge gravity fell on the body of Lacuzes, who was about to enter the guild. Boom! In an instant, in front of the gate of the fairy tale guild, a large pit in the shape of a human appeared. Lacuzes was pressed to the ground with a terrified expression, his cheeks pressed against the ground. It's okay like this. Then before I choose the mission, I will wrong Lacuzes and you lie here. As Yuan said, her body flew up to the second floor lightly. In fact, Yuan is doing this for the good of Lacuzes, otherwise Yuan would have to spend some time to kill Lacuzes in seconds. What a trouble. Move, can't move. My body is completely out of control. What is going on? At this moment, outside the gate of the fairy tale guild, Lacuzes found with a horrified expression that the closer his body was to the guild, the heavier it became. Interesting. Do you want to compare with me? Lacuzes didn't get angry because of the sudden gravity that fell on him, but was eager to try. Since someone didn't want him to enter the guild, he just wanted to go in. Move me. As the magic power in Lacuzes' body exploded, his body made a sound of creak, creak. He propped up the ground, gritted his teeth, and walked towards the guild step by step. Under the pressure, Lacuzes could feel the Dragon Slayer crystal in the heart of his body transforming into strands of pure vitality, not only transforming his body. I have become stronger. Lacuzes' eyes lit up with golden lightning. Every step he took, he would leave a deep footprint on the ground. Every step he took, his body would become stronger. The other side, just as Lacuzes was using Egwene's gravity as exercise. Yuan has already arrived at the second floor and picked out her favorite mission. However, Yuan glanced around, and didn't pay much attention to the task she wanted to do. Either the task was too complicated, or the location of the crusade was too far away from fairy tale. For a month, Yuan, who is particular about efficiency, does not intend to do these tasks that take too long and the income is not high. After thinking for a while, Yuan directly crossed the S-level task board and walked deeper into the guild. There are even more difficult tasks, SS level tasks that surpass S level tasks, and 10-year tasks that are above SS level tasks, and even the legendary 100-year task. Generally, if an S level magister wants to accept tasks above S level, he needs the consent of the guild leader, but right now the guild leader is not around, so there is no way. After Yiwen came to these dusty billboards that had been placed in the depths of the guild for a long time, after scanning for a week, his eyes fell on a crusade mission. So it's this mission, Yiwen murmured softly, her eyes finally locked on a picture that looked very retro among all the high-risk missions that were eating ashes. So much so that the paper used to publish the task had turned yellow on the task list. Yiwen gently raised her hand, dusted off the dust on the task list, and then removed the task. It's almost time. In that case, let me complete this task. After Yiwen finished speaking, her body floated up slightly, and flew out of the guild directly from the window on the second floor. Boom. It was also at the same time that Yiwen left, the pressure on Lakuz's suddenly disappeared like the ebbing tide. Ivan, I know you are in the guild, and I have become stronger. This time, I will never lose to you. Lakuz's walked into the guild and looked around passionately, but there was no sign of Yiwen in the guild except the members who were drinking and spanking. What? Lakuz's looked at the empty guild and fell into deep thought. I was a step late and let you run away. After a long time, Lakuz's muttered to himself, his words were full of loneliness and helplessness. Hey, you yellow-haired fool, why are you sad here alone? Do you have the time to be sad? Why don't you hurry up and complete the task, otherwise you will never be able to catch up with Brother Yiwen in the rest of your life. While Lakuz's was feeling alone, Erza came to the guild after eating, and she was going to try to accept her first task. Here you come, red-haired girl. Lakuz's glanced at Erza and said angrily. Ah, are you looking for fault? Who do you say is the red-haired girl? After Erza heard Lakuz's address, the corners of her eyes twitched slightly, her hands lit up, and she summoned the iron sword she just bought from the town, known as the best in Magnolia, and pointed at Lakuz's. Lakuz asked. Asshole, you were the one who called me the yellow-haired fool first. You want to fight, right? Lakuz looked at Erza with a half-smile and asked. Do you want to fight? Do you think I'm afraid of you? Erza ignored Lakuz's previous words, and focused on Lakuz's last question. Her brain has a super streamlined ability and the ability to grasp the key points. Stop talking nonsense, come on. Lakuz said that the endless thunder and lightning were rushing over him. Boom. The iron sword in Erza's hand was also wrapped with a jet-black armed color domineering. Fight, fight, fight. Members in the guild, they usually persuade people not to fight. Other guilds usually persuade others not to fight. Fairy Tale is different. Whoever wins is right. Thunder Dragon's collapsing fist. Flying slash. Boom. In an instant, under the yelling of the guild members, Lakuz's and Erza collided together, and suddenly thunder resounded, and swords struck. Today is another day when the 5 tables of the guild are scrapped. Go back to Makarov in the guild and look at the scrapped table and broken ceiling. While crying, he hit the heads of each of Lakuz's and Erza. Chairman, calm down. Macau usually ran after the fact and came to persuade the president to calm down. In fact, he was the most popular one when he made a fuss. I won't talk about that Kildas after he went to do the mission. Igwin didn't know what to do, and I didn't take care of these 2 idiots, Erza and Lakuz's. Makarov said angrily. In the guild right now, apart from Gildas, only Egwene has the strength to stop Erza and Lakuz's. Regardless of the fact that Erza is only 10 years old, Erza, whose attributes have all reached level 6, is a standard S rank. As for Lakuz's, the 13-year-old Lakuz's also has a strength close to S level. When the 2 of them fought, when Makarov, Kildas and Yiwen were all away, there was no one in the entire guild. It can be plugged in. Well, Brother Yiwen is also on a mission. Erza, who was sitting at the bar and accepting Makarov's punishment, asking that she was only allowed to sit for 3 hours and was not allowed to do other things, raised her immature little hand and preached to Makarov. What? Igwin went on a mission. Erza, Lakuz's, why didn't you tell me earlier? Makarov was startled when he heard Erza's words. You didn't even ask. Smelly old man. Lakuz's sat at the end of the bar and spoke to Makarov unhappily. Bump. Then in the next second, there was another red and swollen bump on Lakuz's head. When you can beat me, then call me a stinky old man. You fool. Makarov looked at Lakuzes unhappily and said. Mikhail, look at the two of them, give me enough time to sit here. I'm going to see which mission Egwene has taken. After Makarov finished speaking, his body floated up slightly, heading towards the second floor of the guild. Which mission did that kid Yuen accept? Makarov came to the S-level task board on the second floor. Looking at the clean and tidy task lists, Makarov scratched his thinning hair in confusion, because he didn't see which mission did Egwene take on. Could it be that Yuen took an ordinary mission? No, only this is absolutely impossible. He is definitely not the kind of quiet person. Makarov himself wanted to go to the ordinary task board at the bottom, but after thinking about it, Yuen is the kind of person who can mix with Kildas, and he will never finish it in an orderly manner. Those low-level tasks. But the S-level task list was indeed not touched by anyone. Could it be? Thinking of this, Makarov seemed to have guessed something. He was startled, and then hurriedly ran to the board where SS level and even higher level tasks were stored. It wasn't until Makarov arrived at the Kanban that he realized that the Kanban that hadn't been cleaned up in the past few years had been cleaned very well, and that there was indeed a task list missing on the Kanban full of tasks. Sure enough, Yuen is an idiot. Makarov looked at the disappearing task list and cursed. I remember this mission is. Hey, that's weird, why can't I remember? It's clearly on my lips, but I just can't remember. Makarov looked at the vacancy in front of him and thought hard, and began to think about which task he put here, but the task list here was really too long, and he thought hard for a long time, but he still couldn't remember it. President, Yuen is at the registration office, registering the tasks she is going to perform. Just as Makarov was breaking his head, Mikhail's voice sounded from downstairs. Hearing Mikhail's shout, Makarov jumped down immediately, came to Mikhail's body, and asked, which mission did Egwene go on? Yuen's mission is. President, you should see for yourself. Mikhail looked at Makarov with some hesitation. After thinking for a while, he put the task-filling form in front of Makarov. This is. Makarov stared at the task-filling form Mikhail handed him with Egwene's name on it. This is, the crusade against Daliola. That idiot Yuen, she actually chose this task. It doesn't matter who it is, get Yuen back for me quickly, that task is not something that Yuen can do now. Looking at the mission Egwene chose, Makarov felt like his lungs were about to explode. Demon Daliola, a powerful demon created by the legendary black mage Zirf. According to historical records, the continent of Daliola has a history of hundreds of years. If there is no powerful senior magister who sacrificed his life to seal the demon, it is unknown what kind of damage will be caused to the continent. However, the original seal of Daliola was undone by someone for unknown reasons more than 10 years ago. Bringing this demon Daliola back to life, he destroyed a town on the first day he broke the seal, which is really extremely cruel. Show off the evil demon style created by the black mage Zirf. In other words, the mission that Yuen accepted to defeat the demon Daliola was not an SS-level mission, but a genuine 10-year mission. Even if it wasn't for Daliola being sealed by the Magister and only recently unsealed, it would be possible to be given a higher level by the Magic Council. As long as tasks of this level are completed, they will be awarded the title of Holy 10 Magisters by the Magic Council immediately. President, are you making a fuss too much? Egwene is a tie with Kildas. It is hard for me to imagine any task in this world that Egwene cannot complete. Mikhail looked at the anxious Makarov, and softly persuaded him. Idiot, is it a trivial matter to defeat the great demon created by Zirf? Even the 10 holy magisters may not be able to do it. Even though Yuen's strength is extraordinary, she's still too young and inexperienced. In case of being hit by some weird magic, accidents will inevitably happen. Makarov didn't question Egwene's strength, he was worried that Egwene's lack of experience would lead to Egwene's misjudgment. When dealing with the demon created by the black mage Zirf, any small mistake would be fatal. No, I have to get Yuen back. Mikhail, the matters in the guild are temporarily entrusted to you. If there is a problem, find a way to solve it first, and wait for me to come back to deal with it. Makarov looked nervous. He said a word to Mikhail, and ran out of the guild to chase after Egwene. Hand it over, leave it to me. Mikhail didn't expect that Makarov would hand over the guild's affairs to him, so he felt a little elated. Could it be that the president means to train me as the next generation president? As Macau said, he had already fantasized in his mind that he would become the president of Fairy Tale, arrogantly driving the members to do things for him. Hey, I'm going on a mission. Not long after Makarov left the guild, Lakuzas stood up from his seat. He was going to carry out the mission, and he planned to take advantage of Makarov's absence and try to complete the S-level mission. That, Macau looked at Lakuzas and wanted to say something. What? Lakuzas frowned, and golden lightning flashed on him. Ah, it's okay. Macau looked at the angry Lakuzas, shrank his neck in fright, and took a few steps back. In such a moment, his dream of being the president was shattered. It's fine. As Lakuzas said, he put his hands in his pockets and jumped directly to the second floor. He came to the S-level task board and prepared to find an S-level task that suits him. At the same time, Erza used communication magic to link with Irene. Irene is in trouble. Brother Yuen is going to attack Daliola. Erza told Irene exactly what she heard. Alusha, you should call me your mother. Irene first corrected Erza's address, and then she and Aaron got to know about Daliola. So what exactly is Daliola? Thing. Dariola seems to be a demon created by the black mage Zirf. I heard that the strength is extraordinary. It is very cruel. Many towns have been destroyed, and he has been active in the mainland for more than 10 years, but he still hasn't been attacked by the Magister. The Magisters who went to crusade against Daliola, but all of them failed. Brother Yuen, he won't. Erza told Irene the rumors she had heard about Daliola. Ah, Jeff, so that's it. I seem to have heard some rumors about Jeff. So, can the cats and dogs he created kill people? After thinking about it, Irene asked Erza suspiciously. Erza. Irene was puzzled. She had lived in the continent of Ishgar all these years, and she had seen demons who claimed to be the Book of Zirf, but they were all small things, and they were killed with a single slap. In the original book of Daliola's crusade mission, it didn't mention it, nor did it mention the level. I think there should be some, and Daliola couldn't even win Ulu's Holy Cross goalkeeper level Magister without using Absolute Freeze Devil. I have given a 10-year task level. Aluza, rest easy. With Yuen's strength, she won't be killed by those small characters. With a relaxed tone, Irene dispelled Alusha's worries about Yuen. I see. Erza nodded, expressing understanding, and then closed the communication with Irene. Eden. After Irene finished communicating with Erza, she softly called Eden's name. Master Irene, my subordinates are here. Eden immediately walked out of the shadows slowly, then knelt down in front of Irene on one knee. Catch up with Yuen and protect his safety. If you encounter a dangerous situation that you can't deal with, call me in time. Irene sat on the sofa, with her beautiful legs crossed, and gave orders to Eden. Obey. After receiving Irene's order, Eden disappeared into the bakery immediately. Yes, although Irene said that there is no need to worry about Yuen's safety, in fact, he is more worried about Yuen than anyone else, so he sent Eden to protect Yuen. In this way, in case of emergency, she can also be the first time came to Yuen's side. On the other side, in the Fairy Tale Guild, Lakuzas quickly selected the S-level mission he planned to complete. He accepted the mission, jumped lightly, and landed on the ground floor, preparing to wait until his grandfather Makarov and Yuen came back. She gave them a surprise. Lakuzas, you are not an S-level magister, you can't perform S-level tasks. Macau looked at Lakuzas who accepted the S-level mission without authorization, and quickly stood up to block him. S-level missions, the difficulty of each mission is fundamentally different from other missions, one might be fatal, and Macau cannot allow Lakuzas to risk his life. Mind your own business. Lakuzas glanced at Macau. His eyes were full of disdain. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with the weak in the guild. Lakuzas, since President Makarov has given me the responsibility of guarding the guild, then I will not let your temper mess around. As Macau said, his eyes gradually became sharper, and there were flames around his body. What? Want to fight, uncle? Lakuzas looked at Macau, who dared to disobey him, with a bit of displeasure, and thunderbolts continued to shine around him. Boy, don't underestimate it, senior. Macau has sharp eyes. He is a senior magister of Fairy Tale, but he is not as weak as everyone imagined. In other guilds, he also has the possibility of being promoted to S-rank magister. Macau and Lakuzas are going to fight. Things are starting to get interesting. The members of the guild gradually became excited as they watched Macau and Lacousses confront each other. Boom! In the next second, thunder resounded. But, this brat, isn't he too strong? Macau staggered and fell to the ground, with black smoke coming out of his mouth. Macau, I told you not to look for things for yourself. Wakaba, with a cigarette in his mouth, looked at the fallen Macau and said helplessly. His old friend is also really good. He knew that Lacousses was a genuine monster. Although he was young, he had completely surpassed them in strength, but he still went to find his own trouble. He's only 13 years old. It's just a monster. Macau wanted to cry. It was a shame to be defeated by a 13-year-old brat. But after thinking about it, this brat is the grandson of the chairman Makarov, so it seems that he can barely accept it. Cut. Lacousses looked at Macau, who was instantly defeated by him, and curled his lips in disdain. He randomly put the S-level task list in the pocket of his trousers behind his buttocks, put his hands in his pockets, and was about to leave the guild. He has no time to waste. He has to become stronger as soon as possible, and then challenge Yuan. Hey, little fool, don't challenge the rules and regulations of the guild. Just as Lacousses was about to leave, Erza, who had finished talking with Irene, blocked Lacousses' way. Tisk, are you a disciplinary committee member? Lacousses couldn't help complaining about Erza who blocked his way forward. By the way, the first person in this guild who violated the rules and regulations was none other than your idiot brother. Erza. After Lacousses complained, he yelled at Erza. Brother Yuan's affairs will be handled by the president. Now I'm only talking about you. Right now, don't try to break the rules and regulations in front of my eyes. Erza held a sharp sword in her hand and spoke to Lacousses. You are annoying. Forget it, just in time. There should be a victory or defeat between you and me. This time, no old man will intervene to save you. Let me beat you to the ground, and then go to the S-level mission. As Lacousses said, bursts of golden lightning flashed all over his body. You who violate the rules and regulations will not be able to defeat the sword in my hand. Erza holds a sharp blade in her hand and smiles on her face. The sword in her hand instantly becomes domineering with a jet black armed color. Don't talk about Lacousses who is almost 14 years old. Aluza who just turned 10 years old, you can't beat her. Macau. Wakaba looked at Lacousses and Erza who were fighting fiercely, and complained to Macau who was lying on the ground. But, Macau felt a blow to his pride. Is there an opening? This bets me on Erza. Then I will hold Lacousses. Just as Macau and Wakaba were lying on the ground discussing life, the members of the guild once again watched the fun and started gambling. Okay, Macau, I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. As soon as Wakaba saw the start of the bet, he immediately left his friend behind, took out his 10,000 private money, and turned towards the person who set up the bet. He ran. I bet 10,000 Lacousses to win. How is money more important than a brother? Macau looked at Wakaba who had abandoned him, and shouted angrily. He stood up with all his strength, and then rushed to the person who set up the gamble, roaring, 100,000 Erza will win. Macau wants revenge, but I advise you, you need to be more cautious, be careful not to lose your property, and then be forced to go to the rooftop. Some guild members reminded Macau. Stop talking nonsense. The battle just now was my carelessness. But I'm serious about the gamble. The corners of Macau's mouth turned upwards. Others could question that he was not a professional magister, but they absolutely couldn't question his identity as a dog bettor. He was a professional bettor. Oh, all of a sudden, Fairy Tale became lively again. Disappear. Erza, it's you who will disappear. Lacousses. Drink, fight, sing, dance. Another happy day. I've been defeated. Lacousses. Kana, who was wearing a white long dress with small lace, looked at Lacousses who was lying on the floor of the guild, looking at the ceiling and wondering what he was thinking, and laughed. TCH, mind your own business, Karna. After seeing the person coming, Lacousses turned his swollen face away from the beating. He, looking at your bad luck recently, do you want me to divination for you? Kana took out the card in her hand, covered her face, and snickered. TCH, since you insist on doing it, then I will reluctantly cooperate with you. But tell you in advance, I don't believe in your divination. Lucusus turned his head and looked reluctant, but Kana was too enthusiastic, so he reluctantly agreed. Let me see. Wow, Lacuses, you are really unlucky. The card shows that if you do S-level missions, you will be in bad luck. Kana spoke softly according to the hint she got from the card magic. Is there such a thing? Lucusus, who had a face of disdain, immediately turned around, with a trace of nervousness in his expression. I'm not feeling well today, so I won't go on the S-level mission for now. Lucusus sat up from the ground as he spoke, and walked towards the outside of the guild. As for the S-level task in his hand, it was snatched away by Erza, and then reposted on the S-level kanban on the second floor. He. Kana looked at Lucusus's appearance of pretending to be unrestrained but actually left in a hurry, covered her mouth with a card, and smiled secretly. After Lucusus left, it was Mikau who earned a lot of money. At this moment, he was constantly mocking Wakaba. Ha ha ha, what did I say? I am a professional in gambling. What are you proud of? The guy who got lucky. Wakaba's face was distorted. Mikau made money, which made him feel worse than killing him. It's a bit noisy, I can't calm down and choose tasks. In front of the ordinary mission board, she suffered some minor scratches, and her eyes were flashing over the missions posted on the board, looking for Erza who was suitable for her mission. This task seems to be suitable for me. After a long while, Erza picked up a reward after completing the task, which was a task list of rare armor, talking to herself. A few days later, Yuen had already got off the train with her luggage on her back, and in front of him was a snowy mountain range. Next, we must continue to advance in the direction of the northeast. The air is getting colder. Yuen looked at the map in her hand and talked to herself. The Kingdom of Fury, where Fairy Tail is located in the southwest of the Ishgar continent, facing the western continent, so once the Zirf Empire launches an attack on Ishgar, Fairy Tail in the Kingdom of Fury will bear the brunt. The place where Daliola was active was in the colder northeast of Ishgar, which was already outside the sphere of influence of the Kingdom of Fury. Yuen let out a white breath, and walked towards the dark mountains according to the map in her hand. There would be no convenient means of transportation like trains on the road ahead. At night, when the last train arrived at Monet, a city on the northeast coast of the city, a short old man jumped off the train. He closed his eyes tightly, feeling the magic power flowing in the air, showing a bit of helplessness. Hugh, is it still a step too late? Doesn't this brat Yuen need to rest? This little old man is the Fairy Tail Guild leader Makarov who was chasing after Yuen. Originally, he wanted to intercept Yuen in advance, but Yuen was advancing so fast that there was basically no gap. From the train that was transferred, it could be seen that Yuen had studied the train schedule before departure, and then chose the best route. It's getting late, I can't catch up now, let's take a rest first. Makarov thought so, and came to a nearby hotel to stay. And Yuen is still moving forward. The animal fish fruit phantom beast species blue dragon form brings Yuen strong physical and mental strength, so that he will not feel tired even if he does not sleep for 5 days. If Yuen is not afraid when she met Daliola, she was not in a good condition, so she let Daliola go, and Yuen chose to fly at full speed to find Daliola. 2 weeks later, in a pale and endless snow-covered mountain, a young man is lying in the snow swaggeringly. The young man is a little embarrassed, as if he just had a fight with something, and he is falling asleep because of being too exhausted. Roar! Not long after, a huge white bear that seemed to blend in with the whole environment found it by smell. The boy who was lying in the snow sleeping soundly, the giant bear opened its bloody mouth without any hesitation, about to bite down on the boy lying in the snow. What? It was also at the moment when the giant bear opened his mouth that the boy opened his eyes. What are you doing? Looking at the giant bear with its bloody mouth wide open, the young man frowned. For a moment, there seemed to be a red light, with an overwhelming aura, bursting out from the young man's eyes. Woo! The giant bear, which was nearly 5 meters tall, showed a look of fear when he saw the young man open his eyes, and beads of sweat continued to flow from around his nose and lips. For a moment, the boy in the eyes of the giant bear changed drastically. In the eyes of the giant bear, the boy was no longer a child the size of a bean, but a head hundreds of meters long, and the head alone was a horror the size of a small house. The Shenlong is opening its mouth wide enough to swallow him in one gulp, roaring continuously. fear arising from biological instinct. Let the giant bear turn over directly, like a puppy, with its limbs facing the sky, sticking out its tongue, and showing a flattering expression at the same time. Good boy. The boy gently stroked the giant bear's head, then took out a piece of charcoal from his pocket, and placed it in front of the giant bear's nose. Sniff. The giant bear seemed to understand what the boy meant, and immediately sniffed vigorously, then got up and adjusted his direction. Set off. The boy jumped lightly, came to the giant bear's body, and then patted the giant bear's big head lightly. Roar. Like a happy husky, the giant bear headed towards the direction where the smell on the charcoal the boy fed him was the strongest. As for the boy riding the giant bear, it was Yuan who followed Daliola almost across the entire continent of Ishgar. In a city in the north that is always covered by ice and snow. A beautiful woman with short black hair, a delicate face, and a curvy figure is wearing underwear, practicing ice modeling magic in the ice and snow. Behind her are two teenagers who look about 8 or 9 years old, wearing underwear, practicing magic with her. The three of them seemed to ignore the biting cold wind, and let the cold wind blow on their bodies, but still didn't feel any discomfort. A few hours later, after the three of them finished training, a young man with short black hair sat in the white snow, looked at the beautiful woman and said, "Ulu, I found out where Daliola is, and I want to seek revenge on him." Touch. The beautiful woman punched the boy on the head and said angrily, "Idiot. Your current strength is still too immature in front of Daliola, and you want to seek revenge from Daliola. Let's talk about it when you defeat me. Ulu, I'm already very strong." The boy looked at the beautiful woman stubbornly, his eyes were full of anger. Daliola destroyed his town, killed his parents, and he had a blood feud with the demon. No, just don't. After the beautiful woman finished speaking, she didn't give the boy a chance to continue talking, and put on the clothes on the ground. She planned to go to the town to buy some delicious food for her 2 apprentices. Dozens of minutes later, when the beautiful woman walks away. Hateful. The boy covered his head with tears in his eyes. Gray, calm down. Uru is for our own good. Beside the black-haired boy, a boy with short white hair who looked older than the black-haired boy softly persuaded. Leon, you don't understand anything. Even without Ulu's help, I can kill Daliola by myself. The black-haired boy named Gray pushed away the white-haired boy Leon, who was persuading him with good words, and rushed towards the direction he had inquired about, where Daliola was haunting. Gray, it's not good, I have to tell Ulu about this. Leon looked at Gray, who was advancing at full speed, his eyes were full of anxiety. After thinking for a while, he decided to go down the mountain to find Ulu. Hey, can it be cheaper? This is already the cheapest price, okay. This is really difficult. In the town, Ulu is negotiating with fruit vendors, because it has been covered by ice and snow for a long time. There is no shortage of fish and meat, but there is only a lack of fresh fruits and vegetables, which are shipped from the warm south. It will be very expensive to get here. Ulu, it's not good. Gray went to find Daliola. Just as Ulu was thinking about how to buy what he wanted cheaply, Leon's voice suddenly came from a distance. What? Ulu panicked when she heard the words, and she frowned. Gray is an idiot. Leon, you stay here. I'm going to find Gray. After Ulu finished speaking, he directly threw the purchased food in his hand to Leon, and then ran towards the town where it was rumored that Daliola had passed by with a panicked expression. The other side, Yuan, who was riding a white bear, also came to the vicinity of the town where Daliola was located. I can't just watch Ulu and Gray attack Daliola, I must not miss this opportunity. I have learned that super powerful magic, even if there is an accident, I will definitely be able to help Ulu. Leon, who stayed in place and kept pacing back and forth, with short white hair, had a decision in his mind. Without hesitation, Leon ran towards the town where Daliola was. On the snow-covered streets. Not long after Leon advanced, he heard a burst of rhythmic footsteps behind him. Anyone else going up front? No, I have to stop him. Thinking of this, Leon immediately turned around, and shouted at the snowy sky behind him, "People in front, don't move forward, the front is very dangerous. There are demons traveling." Devil, sure enough, this feeling is Daliola. However, the sound of footsteps not only did not weaken because of Leon's shouting, but became stronger and stronger. At the same time, Leon also gradually saw clearly what was the thing that kept running and making squeaking noises on the snow. It was a monster nearly 5 meters tall. When the giant beast found Leon, its speed began to weaken, and then it slowly appeared in front of Leon. Leon felt the terrifying oppression of the giant beast in front of him, and his heart trembled suddenly. When he saw the appearance of the giant beast clearly, he directly sat on the ground in fear. I saw a huge bear staring at him. Strange, monster. Leon looked at the big bear and spoke fearfully. It's not a monster. I am the Magister of Fairy Tale. Just as Leon watched the giant bear trembling with fright, a delicate and handsome face appeared on the top of the giant bear. Mage. Leon stared blankly at the boy who was riding a giant bear and who was about his age. Okay, I accepted the crusade mission from Daliola. Young man, listen to what you said just now. In other words, Daliola is not far ahead, right? The boy was of course Egwene, who came here to fight against Daliola. At this moment, he looked at Leon under him and asked. To be honest, since he stepped into this range, in his perception, there are 2 huge energy clusters different from ordinary people. According to Yuen's guess, the slightly weaker one is probably Uru, and the slightly stronger one should be Dalio. Pulls it up. Yes, he's in that direction, Leon said, pointing out the way for Egwene. Thank you. After thanking Leon, Yuen prepared to ride the giant bear to attack Daliola. That, Mr. Magister, please take me with you. Just when Egwene was about to ride the giant bear to look for Daliola, the white-haired Leon looked at the boy and begged. Okay, Yuen, who closed her eyes tightly to sense the energy ahead, nodded slightly after listening to Leon's words and after thinking for a few seconds. Immediately afterwards, the giant bear slowly lay down. Come on, boy. Egwene sat cross-legged on top of the giant bear and preached to Leon. Forehead. Leon was a little scared, but finally climbed on top of the giant bear. Roar. Night. A huge demon with a height of nearly 10 meters and a ferocious face walked in the town. As the monster advances, corpses are scattered all over the place, and the town is reduced to ruins. Run. Countless townspeople kept running away. In front of that huge monster, all resistance seemed negligible. Even the powerful magisters had already died at the hands of this monster, and all of them died in an instant. It was solved, which almost caused the residents in the town to collapse. Daliola, here I come. However, among the countless fleeing crowd, there was a boy who looked to be about 8 or 9 years old, who rushed towards the monster against the flow of people. It was Grey who came. Roar. The monster seemed to have noticed the little ant roaring at him. He was very angry. He was a demon created by the great Jareth. The monster roared angrily, stomped its feet randomly, and countless cracks appeared on the ground, attacking Grey. Floor of ice. Grey's eyes were extremely cold. Facing the monster's attack, he responded calmly. First, he froze the ground to give himself a point of strength, and then jumped high, performing another modeling magic. Ice spear. A long spear exuding cold air appeared in Grey's hand, and then flew towards the demon. How about this trick? Grey looked at his strongest modeling magic, revealing a hint of complacency. Facing the 2-meter-long ice spear made by Grey, Daliola just slapped it casually, like slapping a mosquito, and slapped it into countless pieces. Then, he came behind Grey and opened his blood basin. Big mouth. Roar. A huge sound wave roared out from Daliola's mouth, his eyes fixed on Grey below him, and at the same time he raised his right hand. Why is it like this? Grey looked at Daliola, who was emitting a fierce light in front of him, and knelt directly on the ground. His body was motionless, trembling, and his eyes were full of fear. That was his strongest magic, but it couldn't do any harm to Daliola. Call. Before Gredo could think, with a howling sound, Daliola's attack landed directly. Boom. Under a burst of flying sand and rocks, a thin figure resolutely blocked Grey. Woo. Grey looked at the figure who blocked the attack instead of him, and tears kept rolling in his eyes. Ulu. Grey took a deep breath and called out the name of the woman who saved him. It was his teacher Ulu who came. Beast, the strength is not small. Ulu took a deep breath, looked at his broken leg, and knew that he couldn't run. Sculpture of Ice White Rose Garden. Ulu didn't hesitate, and directly released the modeling magic. Endless freezing air was released from Ulu's hands, completely freezing half of the street, and at the same time freezing the mighty Daliola. Successful. Gray looked at Ulu, who froze Daliola in one shot, and opened his eyes wide. He knew that his master was the strongest. Roar. However, before Gray could be happy, the huge demon Daliola roared angrily, ejecting a terrifying energy beam from his mouth. It directly destroyed the ice around the body completely, and at the same time completely destroyed the street behind Ulu. Hateful. Ulu looked at the unharmed Daliola, his eyes trembled. Ice-shaped white rose. While Ulu was feeling the strength of Daliola in his heart, his hands kept moving. For a moment, the ice and snow collided with Daliola's terrifying spell power. The endless power makes the whole street torn apart. In this way, the mighty Uru and Daliola fought fiercely for dozens of rounds. When Ulu's strongest ice shape briefly frozen Daliola for a few seconds, what appeared in front of everyone was an unharmed and terrifying demon. Too strong. Ulu frowned as he looked at Daliola, who could stand up again no matter how powerful her magic was. If it was in her heyday, she would still be able to fight Daliola, and it is still unknown who will win the battle in the end, but now, if she wants to save her beloved apprentice, she can only use that trick. Ah! Gray looked at his master and wanted to say something else. He saw the injury Ulu had suffered to protect him, and his heart ached. Gray, you are really brave. For my apprentice, I have a reason to continue fighting. As Ulu said, amazing magic power erupted from his body. Ulu. Gray looked at Ulu with a nervous expression. Gray, actually, I still have a magic trick that I haven't taught you, because if possible, I hope you will never use this trick. Absolutely frozen. At the cost of the caster's magical body, the magic that completely seals the target. As Ulu said, an astonishingly powerful magical power erupted in her body. This will be Wulu's last move, and also her strongest magic. Combining the disappearing attribute with modeling magic, it is a genuine super magic. Ulu. Tears flowed from Gray's eyes. In his eyes, his master Ulu was the strongest magister, and his master would never be defeated. Gravity Fist Tiger. Just when Uru was about to say goodbye to his apprentice Gray, a huge gravitational wave formed a ferocious giant tiger and bit it towards Daliola. In an instant, Daliola, the street under Daliola's feet and behind him, and the high snow-capped mountains behind the street were all distorted in front of this terrifying gravitational wave. Boom! Immediately followed by a roar, Daliola was accidentally hit by this terrifying gravity wave and flew into the sky. Half of the street and the towering tower behind him flew into the sky with Daliola, Snow Mountain. The streets, the mountains, the peaks have all disappeared. Gray with black shattered hair looked at the disappearing mountain, opened his mouth wide, and his eyes were full of disbelief. Hey, what amazing magical power! Even Ulu's eyes widened in shock after seeing the huge gravitational wave blasting into the sky with Daliola, the street and the mountain together. Leave it to me here. Accompanied by a slightly immature voice, an afterimage flew past Ulu and rushed towards Daliola in the sky. Ha, ha, ha. Immediately afterwards, Gray felt a burst of rapid breathing sounded behind him. This is. When Gray heard the sound, he turned around tremblingly, and what he saw was a huge snow-white beast clinging to him, panting continuously. The heavy breathing sound was exactly what the beast made. There is another demon. Gray looked pale with fright at the beast. Gray. Ulu looked at the beast behind Gray, and his hands suddenly condensed into ice. Ulu, Gray, it's me. Don't be afraid, Dubai won't hurt anyone. Just when Ulu was about to make a move, a white figure appeared on the beast's head. As if to verify what the white figure said, the huge beast put its head in front of Gray, stuck out its tongue, and licked Gray's body again and again. Forehead. Gray looked at the beast in a daze, and then at the white figure above the beast's head. His eyes were full of puzzlement. Leon. Ulu stared blankly at the white figure on the head of the beast, but she still put away the magic she was going to release, and after confirming that the beast was not malicious, she turned to the white figure on the head of the beast. At the same time, Leon, another apprentice of hers, asked, "Didn't I tell you not to come, Leon?" This is Uru. As Leon said, he was about to explain to Ulu what was going on. Boom. However, before he finished speaking, there was an explosion sound in the air, and a dark figure was seen, clasped his hands together. Instantly there were countless flames, and thunder struck Daliola in the air. Roar. Daliola, unable to dodge, wailed in pain instantly. Who is that person? Wulu looked at the black figure in the air and her pupils shrank suddenly. She could feel the majestic vitality in the figure and the magical power like a vast ocean. That's Brother Yuen, the fairy tale magister, who came here to subdue Daliola. Leon stood on the head of the giant white bear, looking at the figure constantly releasing magic in the air, eyes full of little stars. The magister of fairy tale. Someone actually accepted the task of crusade against Daliola. Ulu was moved when she heard the familiar guild name. As a magister, Ulu knew the danger level of Daliola, which surpassed the SS level mission and was called the 10-year mission level. Could it be that a strong man who ranks among the top 10 magic ways made a move? Ulu's expression was serious. In her opinion, the only ones on this continent who are capable of dealing with Daliola are those who are ranked among the Holy 10. Add to air, solid state. Add to the air, hard. Additional magic sky cage. In the sky, Egwene continued to cast spells on Daliola calmly. In an instant, the air around Daliola suddenly froze, and Daliola was controlled in the sky like this. No matter how he moved, he couldn't break through Egwene's additional magic. Roar. After Daliola tried several times but couldn't get his body out of the air, he opened his mouth, and infinite mana power gathered towards his mouth immediately. Separation magic power. Yuen watched Daliola, who was about to unleash his excitement, perform power separation. In fact, the idea of this move came from Irene, but Yuen used it directly. Roar. Daliola, who was gathering mana power, suddenly felt that the mana power in his body disappeared, and his eyes widened. For the first time, emotions other than anger appeared in those eyes full of anger, which was called puzzlement. So, is this the power used by the devil? Yuen looked at the dark energy ball in her hand and fell into deep thought. Hee. Immediately afterwards, the corners of Yuen's mouth rose slightly, and he whispered to Daliola, Dariola, I will accept your power. Add. As Yuen said that, she directly attached the dark power to her body. Since the dragon-slaying magic was created by Irene, and its principle is to add the power of the dragon to the human body, so that humans have the power to compete with the dragon, then the magic of destroying the devil and the magic of destroying the gods are probably the same, is to attach the power of demons and gods to human beings, so that human beings have the same physique as demons and gods, so as to destroy demons and gods. Of course, Yuen was not sure whether her experiment would be successful. He originally thought that if it failed, he would separate the additional attributes. But luckily Egwene succeeded. I saw that the moment Yuen added the power of the devil, her body was covered with dark lines, and she looked like a ferocious devil. Quote ? Quote. At the same time, Daliola, who was watching this scene, was completely stunned. Next is the second step. Yuen remembered that the first generation of extinction magic had great disadvantages, just like a dragon slayer eventually became a giant dragon. If you use too much extinction magic, you will eventually become a member of the species you wiped out, so Yuen intends to get rid of this disadvantage, and the way to eliminate this disadvantage is Secondary Edition. Yuen tried to attach the devil power in her body to her own devil fruit. Yuen's inspiration for this came from the second-generation Dragon Slayer Magister. The second-generation Dragon Slayer Magister buried the Dragon Slayer Demon Crystal, which is the heart of the dragon, in his body to help him use the magic of destroying attributes and at the same time ensure that I am not transformed into a dragon. Devil fruit is a very miraculous thing. Every devil fruit is alive, and while becoming one with the host, it also maintains independence, and this happens to be the same as the Dragon Slayer Crystal. So, when Yuen saw her system bar, the Devil Fruit bar, Superman Series, Heavy Fruits, LV8 Plus becomes Superman Series Heavy Fruits Killing Evil at LV8 Plus. Egwene knew she had succeeded. With this prefix, Yuen can use the power of destroying evil unscrupulously without worrying about being assimilated by the power of the devil. As for whether the devil fruit will be assimilated, anyway, the devil fruit also has the prefix of the word, devil. Don't worry, but look forward to whether there will be some wonderful chemical reactions between the devil-killing magic and the devil fruit. At the same time, Yuen can still feel that the original upper limit of the devil fruit level, that is, the upper limit of level 10, has been successfully broken as Yuen adds the attributes of the devil fruit. After upgrading to level 10, you can move towards higher levels. Chapter 31. Now Daliola, what other means do you have? Just use it and let me see. After getting acquainted with her own power to destroy evil, Yuen looked at Deliola and spoke in a cold voice. Quote. Deliola struggled for a while, and found that it was impossible to break through Egwene's cage in the sky, and there was no extra magic power to condense and arouse, so she immediately lay on the ground motionless as if she was lying on the ground, looking at Egwene coldly. Is that so? You have exhausted all your strength? Yuen stared blankly at the motionless Deliola, and then realized that the demon in front of her had exhausted her strength. If I had known that you were no more than this level, I shouldn't have wasted time. Instead, I would have maximized my knowledge color at once, locked onto you before it was exhausted, and then flew over to destroy you. Egwene shook her head as she looked at Deliola, who had no power in front of her and no longer had the power to resist. Originally, he remembered that Deliola could overwhelm Uru, who possessed the strength of the Holy Ten, so he should be very strong, so he kept adjusting his state, and at the same time simulated the battle scenes after meeting Deliola countless times in his brain, and at the same time he has developed more than 30 tactics to deal with Deliola, but as a result, hearing is worth seeing. Although Deliola gave him the feeling that he was strong, he was not that strong, at least far weaker than Kilda's. No, it's not that Deliola is too weak, but that I imagined Deliola to be too strong. When Yuen thought of this, her originally frowning brows loosened. It wasn't that Deliola was too weak. In fact, Deliola, who had the power to defeat Ulu, was definitely considered strong, even among all the demons created by Zirf. Among them, the destructive power should be ranked high, but even so, Deliola is still not as strong as Yuen, who has reached the 8th level of all attributes. Goodbye, Deliola. While speaking, Yuen raised her hand and activated her own gravity fruit ability, and the gravity fruit, which was integrated with the power of the devil, released a jet black gravity light. Next second, there seems to be fire falling from the sky in the sky. Like a sun, rising slowly, piercing through this endless and long night. That is, what? On the ground, accompanied by the entangled flames in the sky, illuminating the earth, and the huge rocks that kept falling, countless refugees who raised their heads to pray stared wide-eyed. Is it a miracle? Some refugees fell to their knees on the ground and opened their mouths in surprise. The stars are falling from the sky. The child looked at the sky and smiled innocently. What is that? Is it also magic? The magic of summoning stars? Gray and Leon stared at the sky, their eyes widened. They had never seen such magic, which had surpassed their understanding of magic. It's probably a type of celestial magic, and it's the apex of celestial magic. It's called true celestial magic. It's a super magic called starfall. It's a super magic that summons meteorites to completely destroy the enemy. It is a magic that can only be mastered by those who are located at the apex of the entire Ishgar continent and who are known as the top 10 Magister-level powerhouses. Wooloo looked at the huge meteorite that fell from the sky and grew bigger and bigger in their eyes. Her pupils trembled, and beads of sweat kept rolling down her cheeks. Even if she faced this level of magic, she might not necessarily possess it, ability to protect oneself. Summon meteorites and completely destroy the enemy. That Magister also. It's too stupid. Gray and Leon seemed to have forgotten where they were. They looked up at the meteorite that was getting closer and closer, and complained loudly. Not good. With beads of sweat on his face, Ulu shielded Gray and Leon behind him, and then put his hands in a posture of ice modeling magic. Immediately, a huge wall of ice appeared in front of Ulu. I hope he can block the impact for a while. Wooloo was worried as he watched the meteorite falling from the sky. Boom. It was also at the moment when Wooloo was worried that the meteorite fell from the sky. It landed directly over Deliola. Quote. At this time, Deliola was like a resident who escaped from the city on the ground, his eyes widened and he remained motionless. Don't wait for Deliola's reaction. Accompanied by a roar, the meteorite that fell from the sky, together with Deliola in the sky, smashed towards the high mountain outside the town. Immediately after the meteorite collided with the mountain peak, accompanied by a terrifying explosion, Deliola was crushed and smashed together with the mountain peak. Terrifying waves of air rushed in all directions. A violent blast swept across half of the town, rolling up countless ruins. At the same time, the strong wind will continue to burn the town, and the dangerous flames will be extinguished. Ulu leaned back against the wall nervously, holding Gray and Leon in his arms, and yelled at Gray and Leon at the same time. Grab my arm tightly, don't be blown away by the aftermath. Okay. Gray and Leon nodded lightly, holding their hands tightly together, leaning against Ulu's arms. 10 minutes later, when the aftermath dissipated, only then did Gray and Leon reveal their small heads. At this time, the ice wall behind Ulu was almost shattered by the aftermath. The town is gone. Gray and Leon looked at the direction of the original town in front of the wall, and their eyes widened. Under the aftermath of the Yuen meteorite, half of the town was directly blasted to the ground. In fact, Daliola had turned that part of the town into ruins, making it uninhabitable, and Egwene just made the town more level. Well, it is more convenient for the citizens to rebuild. Mission completed. In the air, when Yuen checked his character template and got a 10-year mission medal, he knew that Daliola had been completely wiped out by him. Yuen hesitated after receiving the 10-year mission medal, and finally decided to keep the medal. After all, the 10-year mission medal can upgrade all abilities below the 10th level. Yuen's level 9 skills have been upgraded to level 10. Right now, Yuen doesn't have the ability to level 9, so she doesn't plan to use up her medals. Instead, wait until he completes the SS level mission in the future, upgrades one of his skills to level 9, and then uses the medal to upgrade to level 10, so as to maximize the benefits. Thinking of this, Yuen withdrew from her character template, looked at the town below her, and then slowly drifted down. With the slowly rising sun, the sky revealed a pale light. All the residents who watched in fear as Egwene fought with Daliola all opened their mouths. The battle between Uru, Yuen and Daliola finally came to an end. As the sky gradually brightened, the townspeople in the town finally had a clear view of their town at the moment. At this moment, apart from being shocked, they were still shocked. The streets that were jettisoned by Daliola's light, the burning mountains, the houses frozen into one piece by Ulu's ice, and half of the town that was turned from ruins to flat ground under the aftermath of the Yuen meteorite, no matter how you look at it, it's all a little too exaggerated. Ah, another mountain has disappeared. It's strange why I need to use it again. It seems that a mountain has been wiped out just now. There are not many towns left, but there are still some left. Haha, that's not bad, we survived Daliola's attack. Thank you, Lord Magister. Countless townspeople stood on the road leading to other towns in the distance, looking at the burning mountains in the distance. They complained, chatted, and some prayed or thanked. At the same time, after confirming that Daliola was eliminated, Yuen gently floated in front of Ulu, Leon, and Gray, and said calmly, "Mission completed." Child, when Egwene fell in front of everyone, Ulu stared at Yuen's too young face for a moment. At first, she thought that Yuen would be an old man who had gone deep into the devil's way. Now it seems that he is about the same age as her apprentices Leon and Gray. Brother Yuen, you are too powerful. Leon looked at Yuen excitedly. Yuen's appearance seemed to open a door to a new world for him. It turns out that a magister can be strong like this. Too strong. Gray also kept nodding his head. It was also the first time he had seen a magister of this level, and he was truly a real destroyer. Where? Yuen shook her head modestly. Compared to Irene, who was immobile and gave the country the whole face, he was nothing at all. Boom. It was also at the same time that Yuen announced the completion of the mission. The impact of the meteorite caused an avalanche to occur on the mountain peaks farther away, and accompanied by a howling sound, it flooded towards the town. It's not good, it's an avalanche. Gray stared wide-eyed at the huge white waves accompanied by whistling sound. To be honest, an avalanche of this level is a bit tricky. Wulu looked at the huge white torrent, and a few drops of crystal-clear sweat dripped from her forehead. It would be fine if it was her complete victory period, but the magic power she had just fought against Daliola was not enough. Stop an avalanche of this magnitude. But if it's just to protect a few people. Wulu thought that although the town could not be protected, she still had the confidence to protect the people present. The good thing is that the citizens all ran away when she was fighting with Daliola, which means that it doesn't matter if the town is swallowed up by the avalanche, and no one will be injured because of it. No solution anymore. Stand back. Looking at the coming avalanche, Yuen turned around and led Ulu and the others back. Her eyes changed. The original human eyes suddenly became like some kind of reptile, and then her body began to move continuously. Swell. At the same time, the originally bright sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds without warning, a strong wind blew up in the town, and there seemed to be lightning flashing in the sky indistinctly. In just a few seconds, the sky and the earth changed color, the wind was strong, the clouds were foggy, the lightning and the thunder. Suddenly there is a god hiding behind the thick dark clouds, looking down on all living beings. Boom! Lightning flashes, thunder resounds. Woo! Accompanied by bursts of terrifying roars, the giant snow-white bear seemed to sense something and instinctively lay down on the ground, trembling in its mouth. Roar! At the same time, Yuen also gradually completed her transformation. He suddenly let out a roar that was not human-like. The next second, his body turned blue and flew into the sky, his figure hidden in the dark clouds. Brother Yuen, what happened just now? Leon and Gray glanced at each other, they were both shocked by Yuen's sudden change. Is it some kind of reception magic? But what is it like to receive magic that will create such an exaggerated scene? Ulu couldn't understand. Although she had traveled all over the world and had some experience, she had never seen such exaggerated magic. Just when Ulu, Gray and Leon were wondering, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly rolled over. Boom! The lightning flashed, and there seemed to be a pair of scarlet eyes looming in the dark clouds. Yes, the monster is inside. Gray's keen senses captured the fleeting scene in the sky, and he was afraid. Even if there is something in the dark cloud, it will only be Brother Yuen, right? How could there be monsters? Leon smiled after hearing Gray's words. He watched Yuen fly into the sky. With Yuen's strength, how could there be monsters in the dark clouds in the sky? There really are monsters. Gray retorted that he really saw the giant monster. Impossible. Leon shook his head. He didn't believe it at all. He thought it must be Gray's eyesight. Boom! Just as the two were arguing, a huge head with a majestic face suddenly appeared in the dense dark clouds. The head was as big as a room, with two horns and eyes like grinding discs. What a monster! Leon stared wide-eyed at the huge head. Look, I didn't lie to you, did I? Seeing Leon's surprised look, Gray immediately felt a little less fear in his heart, and instead became a little more proud. No, not a monster. This is... Wooloo looked at the monster in the sky with its huge head protruding and rolling in the clouds, and was startled. For that creature, there is a description. Its horns resemble a deer, its head resembles a camel, its eyes resemble a rabbit, its neck resembles a snake, its belly resembles a house, its scales resemble that of a fish, its claws resemble that of an eagle, its paws resemble those of a tiger, and its ears resemble those of an ox. Dragon. Is that a dragon? Couldn't it be that Brother Yuen changed? The eyes of Gray and Leon were full of disbelief. Hot breath. Just when Gray and the others were shocked, the giant dragon opened its bloody mouth, and a terrifying heat shot out from the dragon's mouth. In an instant, the huge heat wave collided with the violent avalanche of nature, and the endless ice and snow turned into white steam and rose up. When blizzard collides with the dragon's heat, the winner is heat. The terrifying heat directly burned through this seemingly endless blizzard. The aftermath of the heat breath turned into a heat wave and burned up all the snowflakes that hadn't approached. In the blink of an eye, the avalanche disappeared without a trace, but this is not over yet. Yuen's all-out heat didn't stop, but rushed directly towards the snow-capped mountains several kilometers away. Boom! Accompanied by the terrifying roar, the snow-capped mountain disappeared instantly in just a blink of an eye, but even so, Yuen's heat still had no intention of stopping, and the heat wave kept roaring forward. 1, 2, 3. The endless flames burned more than a dozen high mountains. Until this moment, Yuen's heat did not stop. Watching the snow on the nearby snow mountains all melt into water vapor. Yuen barely closed her mouth, and then her body slowly changed into a human shape, falling from the air. Very good, the avalanche is also resolved. Yuen wrapped her arms around her body, expressing her satisfaction with her masterpiece. Maybe Yuen didn't realize that his mind had entered fairy tale mode unconsciously. Although I really want to thank you, but no matter how you look at it, isn't it too much? Gray and Leon stared wide-eyed at the almost completely destroyed town, the disappearing mountain, and the huge mountain that was still burning and gushing lava in the distance, changing from a snow mountain to a volcano. Hasn't Daliola already solved it? The avalanche has also been melted by me, and everyone can live in safety. Yuen turned around and forgot to take a look, and the ruins in front of her sighed helplessly. It turns out that such a small gen was wiped out by Daliola unknowingly. Oh, I really can't help you. Then I will help you one last time. No, no, that was wiped out by you. Gray and Leon complained inwardly. But they didn't dare to say it outright. It's not that they were cowardly, it's just that Yuen's strength left a deep impression on them, and they probably won't forget it in this lifetime. After Yuen finished speaking, he ignored Gray, Leon and the others, and started his own actions. I saw dark and strange lines suddenly growing on Yuen's body, and then endless gravity waves were released towards the sky, and the ruins of the whole town squeaked and roared in the next second. These roaring ruins, under Yuen's powerful control, shone with black light, slowly separated from the ground and flew towards the sky. This is not as simple as 1 block or 2 blocks. Yuen's gravity wave, covering the entire town. He's cleaning up the ruins of an entire town. However, this was not over yet. Even those mountain peaks destroyed by Yuen, those broken gravels also flew into the sky under Yuen's control. A few minutes later, a huge stone ball made of ruins covering the sky of the entire town is completed. Are you kidding? Gray and Leon looked at the huge stone ball in the sky. They were so afraid that they forgot how to speak. At this moment, they only had one thought in their hearts. Is this the power of God? Go. Of course, these have nothing to do with Egwene. He only has his own affairs in his eyes now. He is manipulating the ruins one by one, building several high mountains around the town like building blocks. Okay, the mountain is returned to you. Half an hour later, after finishing all this, Yuen wiped the sweat from her forehead, turned around and spoke softly to Gray and Leon. However, when Yuen turned around, what she saw was Gray and Leon who were collapsed on the ground. They didn't know why they collapsed to the ground. Anyway, their legs softened, and by the time they realized it, they were already sitting on the ground up. X774, at the beginning of September, Fairy Tale's Magister Egwene completed the 10-year mission and successfully defeated the great demon Daliola created by the Black Magister Zirf. There are more than a dozen people who disappeared together with Daliola. Alpine mountains that have stood over nearby towns for centuries. In this regard, the Magic Council said, "What happened to you guys?" Yuen looked at Gray and Leon who were collapsed on the ground in puzzlement. We don't know either, but having said that, those mountains are like a garbage dump. It's too ugly. Gray and Leon complained to Egwene. What? It would be nice to have a mountain, do you still expect me to make it look better? Yuen frowned. He wasn't good at games like building blocks, and he wasn't even good at games like Tetris, so it was normal for him to be ugly. This is actually. After hearing what Evan said, Gray and Leon didn't dare to refute at all. They were completely overwhelmed by Yuen's strength. Your name is Gray, right? As Yuen said, she looked at Gray with black shattered hair. Yes, yes. Gray immediately stood up straight, like a schoolboy being scolded. Hey, do you know how much trouble you have caused your family to challenge Daliola by yourself? Yuen looked at Gray seriously. In fact, if he was not there this time, Ulu would be in danger. In the original book, Ulu's death was largely responsible for Gray. I will no longer cause trouble to my family. Because my family members are all dead, they were killed by Daliola. Gray's complexion was a bit ugly, his brows were tightly furrowed, there was indescribable sadness in his eyes, and his small fists were clenched tightly. Gray, look behind you. Your family has been worried about you. Yuen floated in front of Gray, and then manually adjusted the direction for Gray, making Gray look at Uru and Leon who were seriously injured behind them. Ulu, Leon, sorry. Gray looked at Ulu and Leon for a moment, and then Gray seemed to understand something, and he threw himself into Ulu's arms. Yes, his family was indeed killed by Daliola, but there are still people who care about him in the world, and those people are also his family. You two are fine. Seeing Gray, who knew he was wrong, Ulu warmed up in his heart, and hugged Leon and Gray into his arms, with a warm expression on his face. If you know your mistakes, just correct them. When you take risks in the future, think about your family. Remember, you are not alone, there are still a group of people who are worried about your safety. Looking at Gray who was sobbing constantly, Yuen educated her. Well, I see, Mr. Egwene. Gray turned around, and Gray, who had already learned Yuen's name from Leon, nodded towards Yuen. You also know that your family will worry about your safety. In that case, don't you want to apologize to your family? Just as Egwene was educating Gray, accompanied by a thunder-like sound, a towering mountain peak slowly moved towards Egwene, Gray, Leon, and Ulu. Sean, the mountain peak has become a spirit. Gray and Leon's eyes widened again. They felt that they had seen more things in just one day today than in the 8 or 9 years since they were born. At the same time, the mountain moved, and he jumped lightly and landed directly on top of the crowd. I'm going to die. Help! The Alpine Goblin has killed someone. Gray and Leon looked at the dark sky, their tears ran wildly, hugged each other, and shouted loudly. No, that's not a mountain, that's... Looking at the huge mountain, Yuen showed surprise for the first time since he traveled alone to complete the mission. Yo, hello everyone, I am Makarov, the president of Fairy Tale. While Egwene was talking, the mountain peak became smaller and smaller above everyone's heads, and finally turned into a little old man who was shorter than the children and dressed in a funny clown costume. He looked at Gray and the others amiably. People, smiling and saying hello. Gao Shan has become a little old man in a circus. Gray and Leon shouted in surprise as they watched Makarov turn into a little old man. President, why did you come to the northeast? Egwene looked at Makarov and greeted him cordially. Kid, who do you think I am here because of? Makarov looked at Egwene and roared angrily. This guy, Yuen, obviously talks about others in the same way, why is he completely unaware? Really, who did this kid learn from? Makarov felt helpless towards Egwene. Could it be because of? Egwene looked at Makarov in surprise. Ah, yes, it's the one that shouldn't. Makarov heaved a sigh of relief looking at Egwene's appearance. It seemed that Egwene was still a little self-conscious. You didn't come to the northeast because of Gildas, did you? Egwene touched her chin, thought for a while, and then replied. Ah, yes, it's because of Kildith. Makarov kept nodding his head, and then he suddenly noticed something was wrong. Ah, Makarov frowned, then roared angrily, Kildaz. I'm because of you. Because of you. You actually went to carry out the 10-year mission without saying a word. What do you think? It's not good, my heart is already hurting. Makarov clutched his heart, he felt that he would not be able to last for a few years if he continued like this. Don't worry, President, you must live a long life. Yuen gave Makarov a thumbs up, predicting Makarov's own lifespan in advance. Thank you. With you, a brat, I won't live long. Speaking of which, what happened to Kildaz you just mentioned? Makarov suddenly remembered something, narrowed his eyes slightly, and at the same time had a bad premonition in his heart. President, don't you know? Yuen was taken aback for a moment, then scratched the back of her head lightly, muttering in her mouth. What should I know? Brat, don't be a fool, tell me quickly. Makarov urged Egwene. Actually, Gildas is also in the north, and I met him a few days ago. I heard him yelling to take revenge on some woman. Yuen turned her brain to answer Makarov's question. Nothing happened when the two met, right? The corners of Makarov's eyes twitched slightly, and then he asked guiltily. The two of us fought. Egwene thought calmly, and answered the question in Makarov's heart. As expected, and then, Makarov felt his head was getting bigger, and he knew that Egwene must have something bad to see Gildas. We didn't do anything, we just exploded a mountain. Then we fell asleep because of too much mana consumption. By the time I woke up, Gildas was gone. So now I don't know where he is, but look at that posture, I advise you to be mentally prepared. Egwene answered Makarov's question truthfully. What do you mean just blowing up a mountain? Do you know how many words I have to write when you tear down a mountain? Makarov felt like he was going to cry. Speaking of which, the surrounding mountains are really strange. As Makarov said, he raised his head and looked at the nearby mountains with different shapes, raised his brows, and thought to himself, he really should go out for a walk more, the world is so big that there are so many wonders. Guess why those mountains became like this? Gray and Leon complained frantically in their hearts. It's just that because Yuen, who is like a monster, is here, they dare not speak out. Are you Lord Makarov, one of the Holy 10? Ulu sized Makarov up and down, until he saw the clown suit Makarov was wearing, and the shining silver medal representing the status of the 10 great sorcerers hanging on his chest. Karlov's identity. Uru had already heard about Makarov, one of the Holy 10. Hello. Makarov looked Ulu up and down, and then showed a kind smile. What a good seedling. What if all three of them can be drawn into the guild? Makarov's eyes kept turning back and forth on Ulu, Gray, and Leon, and he kept thinking. Ulu, is this grandpa famous? Gray and Leon looked at Ulu's respectful expression and asked curiously. This grandfather is a very powerful magister. Ulu nodded, gently stroked the heads of Leon and Gray, and replied. A strong magister. Is it stronger than Uru? Leon was taken aback, and asked suspiciously. Although Daliola was finally solved by Yuan, in Leon's eyes, as long as Ulu can use that trick, Ulu can definitely solve Daliola. Unfortunately, Leon doesn't know the magic he secretly learned from Ulu's study is absolutely frozen, and what price does it take to successfully activate it? But this does not affect Leon's eyes that Uru is the strongest magister. This is a disciple's longing for the master, and children's longing for their parents. Senior Makarov, he is a magister countless times stronger than me. He is the 10 strongest magisters in this continent, and he was selected as one of the top 10 magisters by the Magic Council. Listening to Leon's question, Ulu gently stroked Leon's head and smiled. Mage stronger than Uru. Gray and Leon looked at Makarov in shock. The strength of the magisters is not just based on the strength of the magic power, but more on the belief. Your master Ulu is a very good magister, no less than mine. Makarov looked at Gray and Leon with a smile. Makarov had already looked down on false names such as strength and weakness. This kind of heart is worthy of being the top 10 holy magisters. Ulu looked at Makarov, who looked like a kind old man, thinking inwardly. This continent is too big, and there are countless magisters stronger than her, but the town where Leon and Gray are located is too small, and the sky they can see is very narrow. If you continue to stay here, it may affect the growth of Leon and Gray, maybe. After thinking for a while, Ulu made a decision in her heart. She looked at Makarov and asked, Senior Makarov, can you take these 2 children away? They are both excellent children. If they stay here, it will only delay their growth. Only go to a stronger place, go to the west, where is the right place for them. Is it okay? After hearing Ulu's words, Makarov was slightly taken aback. Please. Ulu leaned forward slightly, begging Makarov. In that case. Makarov nodded on the surface, pretending to be serious, but his heart was already happy, and he had reaped 2 good seedlings, which is a great thing for Makarov. Let's not leave Ulu. Gray, who had just recognized his inner feelings and regarded Ulu as his family, kept shaking his head, as if he didn't intend to leave Ulu. Silly boy, don't you always ask me why I don't keep teaching you new magic? In fact, I have no magic to teach you. The sky here is too small. You need a bigger sky, a wider stage. Follow Senior Makarov and leave, so that you can learn stronger magic and become a magister beyond me. Ulu looked at the young Gray, his once wounded and frozen heart revealed some warmth. Leon was silent after hearing Ulu's words. In fact, he followed Ulu to learn magic earlier than Gray, and asked Ulu why he didn't teach him new magic. If it wasn't for these reasons, he would not enter Uru's study to find magic to learn by yourself. Since you don't want to be separated, why don't you come together? Go to Fairy Tale. Yuan asked, looking at Ulu and Gray, who looked like mother and child loving each other. I don't intend to continue fighting as a magister anymore. My reason for fighting is already. After listening to Yuan's words, Ulu gently stroked Gray's head in his arms, with an extremely sad expression. There is still a reason to continue fighting, right? Whether it's Gray or Leon, it's the reason for you to continue fighting, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be desperate to fight something dangerous like Daliola, right? Yuan directly interrupted Ulu, and he looked at Ulu seriously, Gray in Ulu's arms, and Leon, who was thinking, and preached to the 3 of them. After listening to Yuan's words, Ulu trembled. She looked at Gray and Leon, who had regarded her as her family, and recalled the little things between her and Gray Leon. Suddenly, she felt a little more dissatisfied. She has already lost her own daughter, will she continue to lose it now? This question echoed in Ulu's mind. In the end, Ulu seemed to have made a decision. She hugged Gray tightly, and at the same time, tears flowed from her eyes. Yeah, I have another reason to continue fighting. Ulu's voice trembled. She hugged Gray in her arms tightly, sobbing, looking at Gray in her arms, and Leon beside her, and said, It's really a twisted pair of master and apprentice. Yuan looked at Ulu, who was looking squarely into her heart, and sighed. Sure enough, Ulu and Gray were really similar. Is this the so-called not being a family, not entering a family? Boy, you are very good at teaching. Makarov glanced at Ulu, who was looking squarely into his heart, pulled Egwene aside, and whispered. What education is not education, I just simply understand Ulu's feelings. Yuan sighed. In fact, he was also working hard for the reasons he fought, Irene, Erza, and Fairy Tale. In fact, Egwene has always had a sense of urgency, because if there is no accident, even if the Zirf Empire will not conflict with Fairy Tale in the future, he will still face the Black Dragon Akunologia, whether he will join the guild in the future Naz and the others, or Irene, or all targets to be hunted in the eyes of Akunologia. Yuan is not sure whether the butterfly effect that he has appeared will advance this kind of hunting, so he needs to keep getting stronger until Yuan becomes strong enough to have the power to protect everything he wants to protect. So have you decided? Now that you have found a reason to continue fighting, do you want to come to Fairy Tale? Yuan came to Ulu and asked. Well, I've decided. Now that I have found a reason to continue fighting, even if it is for the two of them, I will continue to cheer up. If this is the case, then my incompetent mother and master should set a good example for the children. Join Fairy Tale together and work hard to become stronger. Ulu showed a refreshing smile as she spoke, and she seemed to have turned back into the free and powerful ice magician she once was. Modeling magic is free magic. Once you block your heart, you will stop. And now Ulu has successfully removed the chains on his body. The sky is getting brighter. When the scorching sun appeared above everyone's heads, and the warm sunlight swayed on Yuan, Makarov, Ulu and others, accompanied by a series of apprehensive vibrations, soldiers in armor, running towards the town. Egwene is not well. Makarov looked at the banners held high in the hands of the soldiers, representing the medal of the Magic Council, and frowned. Is it the Magic Council? Looks like we're going to retreat. Yuan also noticed the soldiers of the Magic Senate, and frowned. In fact, during the days when he was advancing on the ice sheet, he was warned many times by the Magic Senate. Although he explained to these people that the reason why he threw meteorites to the edge of the town was to stop the tide of beasts, but these people did not understand the situation at all. Listen. When things come to this, the only way to do it is to use that trick. Makarov looked at Egwene and blinked. I see, I understand. Yuan nodded slightly, and then used the ability of the gravity fruit to lead everyone onto Debai's back. Additional haste. Time to show your true speed. After Yuan added haste to the giant bear below her, she patted the giant bear's head lightly. Roar! The giant bear roared, accompanied by a sonic boom, and sprinted forward. I can only run away. On the back of the giant bear, Yuan spread out the barrier to block the biting cold wind and air current, and spoke softly. As long as the soldiers of the Magic Senate cannot catch up, it means that Fairy Tale has never made any mistakes. In fact, Yuan didn't even realize that his behavior style was becoming more and more like a fairy tale. Now I will teach you the first rule of the Fairy Tale Guild. When you meet the fools of the Magic Senate, remember to run away immediately. As long as you don't get caught, it means that we have done nothing. As for if these fools come to you later, everyone remembers the same caliber and never did anything. It just didn't work. Makarov sat on the back of the giant bear, watching Ulu and the others speak softly. To put it simply, the fairy tale rule is, even if you do it, you can't admit it. Uru. Is the Magic Council a very bad organization? Gray was a little puzzled. He didn't know what the Magic Council was, so he asked his teacher, Ulu. No, the Magic Senate is an organization that restricts the abuse of magic by magisters and protects civilians who don't know magic. Simply put, the Magic Senate is an organization of justice. Uru wrote for Grakok what the magical court is. Then why are we running away? Gray looked at Uru suspiciously. Since the Magic Senate is a just organization, they should have no reason to escape. This. Ulu opened her mouth slightly, but to be honest, it was not very good for her to answer this question, so she had to look at Makarov. This question is very profound. Makarov's face turned red, and Makarov couldn't answer Gray's question. Of course, this doesn't mean that Makarov doesn't know the answer, it's that he can't say it at all. Could it be that he wants to tell a 7 or 8-year-old child? Yes, our fairy tale is the guild that abuses the most magic power in the whole continent. The docks that are demolished every year destroy more towns than all the dark guilds in the whole continent combined. A guild feeds half a continent of construction teams. I see. Gray was thoughtful. He seemed to understand something, but he didn't seem to understand anything. Call. Makarov breathed a sigh of relief seeing that Gray didn't continue to press him, and then looked at Egwene who was sitting on the head of the giant bear. Yuan, what are your plans next? Makarov planned to ask Egwene carefully about his future plans. If Egwene gave him such a big job to complete the 10-year task alone, he felt like he was about to have a heart attack. Next, I don't have any plans. Speaking of which, it's going to be the harvest season. Yuan gently put away the task list in her hand, and watched Makarov speak casually. Yes, the harvest season is about to begin. Makarov showed an incomparably kind smile, then his face became soft and gloomy, and he looked at Yuan and said in a cold voice, so you just hand what's the mission list you read? Kid. Nothing at all. Egwene replied without changing her face. Stop lying, I've seen it all. As soon as Makarov said that, he jumped in front of Yuan, going to grab the task list. Just kidding, you didn't see anything at all. Yuan held the task list under her buttocks, and clasped Makarov with her hands. The president is fighting with the members. What kind of guild is this? Gray and Leon looked at Yuan who was fighting with their president, and complained. At the same time, they became curious about the fairy tale guild. In the end, the task list in Yuan's hand was snatched by Makarov. Yuan, where did you get this task list? Makarov looked at the task list in his hand and frowned. The task level on the task list was not high, but the task was a bit complicated. I got it from the magisters of other guilds, and I took it just because I was a little interested in this task. Egwene sat on top of the giant bear with a calm expression. Quote. As for Uru, Leon, and Gray, Makarov and Egwene kept silent while watching the riddles. This task is not easy to do. Makarov sighed. Egwene's mission is to investigate the recent child kidnapping cases that have sprung up across the continent. Obviously, these child kidnappers are organized and disciplined. Organizations like this are almost hard to find. Because they will do it cleanly every time they do it, even if they catch some people, those people will bite their tongues and basically can't ask anything useful, so that the organization that abducts children from all over the continent still active on the mainland. It's really not easy to do. Yuan nodded lightly, then she thought of something and looked at Ulu and asked, speaking of which, Senior Ulu, how much do you know about Brian? Brian. Ulu didn't expect that Yuan would suddenly talk to her. She was taken aback for a moment, then thoughtfully, and answered Yuan's question, is that the director of the Magic Development Bureau, Brian? Okay, because Brian is the director of the Magic Development Bureau on the surface, but he has been doing children's business all the time. I heard that Ulu, you seem to have contacted Brian. I don't know how much you know about him. Egwene squinted his eyes, and he deliberately guided Ulu. Has that guy been doing this kind of thing? Could it be that my child was also killed by that guy? Ulu's face turned cold. After hearing what Yuan said, she thought of what Brian had said to her, and she was suddenly furious, and amazing magic power burst out of her body. It seems that you really know him. Yuan asked as she looked at Ulu, who was bursting out with terrifying magic power. I used to pin my hopes on the Magic Development Bureau in order to save my child, but then Brian told me that it failed, and my child died. Now think about how stupid I am. What stupid things have I done? I actually pushed my child into the fire pit with my own hands. I am really a disqualified mother. Ulu's expression was painful. When she thought of sending her child to the traffickers with her own hands, her heart ached and she was in great pain. She thought, her child must hate her very much. Hate her derelict mother. If that's the case, then Senior Ulu, your child is most likely not dead. Yuan felt that the reality was almost the same, so she told Ulu that Eurydia was still alive in another form. Yes, if it is human trafficking, then she should still be alive. Yes, she is very likely still alive. I'm going to find her. Thank you, Egwene, thank you for telling me this information. Ulu took Yuan's hand and kept thanking her. No, because I happen to be investigating Brian and human trafficking. When the Daliola incident has a result in the Senate, we can investigate Brian and human trafficking together. Maybe you can find information about your daughter. Yuen comforted Ulu. As for now, Senior Ulu, you don't need to worry. I think that child who inherited a huge magical power from you should not meet too much danger is. It is good. Ulu nodded. Fighting spirit rekindled in her eyes. She must find her daughter back. That was her tears, and her name was Eurudia. At night, except for the giant bear Dubai who was still galloping, whether it was Egwene, Makarov, Uru, Gray, or Leon, they all hugged Dubai's thick fur and fell asleep. For a moment, there was only Dubai whose eyes were shining with light, and under the blessing of Yuen's additional magic, he happily released the endless spiritual power in his body. Dawn. When the warm rays of the sun caressed everyone's cheeks, Yuen, Makarov and the others opened their eyes one after another. Then I saw countless magisters with weapons in their hands, nervously surrounding Dubai, as if they were confronting Dubai faintly. Quote. The magister who was the leader opened his mouth and seemed to be saying something. But because of the magic barrier attached to Yuen, she couldn't hear what he said at all. So what's going on here? Gray and Leon looked at the magisters who surrounded them with panic. The visitor is not good. Ulu could feel the deep malice of the group of magisters around her. At the same time, she was on guard, ready to strike at any time, freezing the group of magisters into ice. Egwene, could it be your bear? What did it do to these magisters? If you do something bad, just apologize to this group of guys. Makarov scratched his thinning hair. According to Makarov's experience over the years, when magisters from other guilds block the door, it is likely that his own members have done something excessive. A little apology will usually calm the anger of those magisters who come to find fault, of course. If the group of magisters who found fault were not willing to let go, then Makarov would tell those fools what the Holy 10 magisters are. No, my bear is very well behaved, and usually doesn't take the initiative to find fault. Anyway, let's listen to what these guys are saying. As Yuen said, she revoked the barrier she had put on Dubai's back. Suddenly, the howling cold wind blew across everyone's cheeks. Feeling the biting cold wind, Makarov shrank his neck subconsciously. Hey, what's going on with you guys? Don't you know that this is the site of the noisy second hand of our Magister's Guild? Could it be that you want to be an enemy of our guild? When Yuen revoked the surrounding barriers, she finally heard the words of the group of magisters. The noisy second hand. Yuen frowned when she heard what the group of magisters said. Hee, now I know I'm afraid. Now that you know you're afraid, take your bear and get out of here. The leading magister smiled triumphantly at Yuen's appearance. I've never heard of it. Just when the magister thought that the name of his guild had frightened Yuen and was complacent, he saw Yuen showing an extremely bewildered expression. Yuen's words made this group of magisters from the Miaojun Guild almost fall down on the ice. President, have you ever heard of this second-hand guild? Yuen looked to Makarov beside her for advice. Okay. I can't remember. Is it a very powerful guild? There are too many guilds on this continent, even I can't remember the names of all the guilds. Makarov turned his brain, finally gave up thinking, and looked at Ulu. Makarov looked at Ulu and asked, Ulu, you should be the magister here. Have you ever heard of this guild named Miaojun? Your Majesty Makarov, although I really want to answer you, I have never heard of such a guild as the noisy second hand. After thinking about it, Ulu finally sighed helplessly. She has really been away from the magic world for a long time. Ulu, you don't have to be so polite, since you have decided to join our fairy tale. From now on, we are family members. What a lord. Your Majesty, Your Highness, there is no need for the honorific title. Makalo the husband smiled and looked at Ulu. He was really optimistic about Ulu, because Ulu is the kind of steady talent that their fairy tale guild is scarce. It's just selected by the Magic Council, the so-called mirror. It's just one of the 10 holy magisters. The last sentence is very loud. Holy 10, one of the 10 strongest magisters in the Ishgar continent selected by the Magic Council. The magisters who surrounded Yuen and the others by the noisy second hand turned pale with shock after hearing Makarov's words. As long as they are in the magical world of Ishgar, there is no one who does not know the Holy Cross. The name of the Great Magister. That is a group of people standing at the top of Ishgar's magic world. No, it is better to say that they are not so much human beings as they are all monsters in human skin. Brother Jason, shouldn't it be that the Magic Council found out about that and specially sent the 10 great Magisters to destroy us? Some Magisters with a weak defense line blew themselves up on the spot. He looked at the leading Magister and asked extremely nervously. Idiot, don't tell the story yourself. Besides, he said he is the Holy 10. Could it be the Holy 10? He is the Holy 10 and I am the head of the Magic Council. After hearing what his younger brother said, the leading Magister turned pale with shock and said angrily. You are right. After hearing the words of the head Magister, the younger brothers relaxed and gradually calmed down. Oh, at the same time, Makarov, who had been listening to the conversations of the people, immediately grasped the key points in the conversations of these Magisters, and was afraid of the Magic Council, that is to say, these Magisters were doing some shameful things. If so, with a light leap, Makarov leapt from the head of the giant bear to the front of those Magisters. The moment he landed, the circus clown costume on his body turned into a white gold trimmed piece with a print on the back. Coat with the logo of the Holy 10 Magisters. Hey, brats, please tell me what you just said and what you don't want the Magic Council to know. Makarov looked at the noisy second-hand guild members in front of him with a smile, and asked with a smile. Stupid old man, do you think we'll tell you? If you don't want to die, get out of here and don't hinder our guild from doing things. The boss of the noisy Miaojun group of Magisters named Jason spoke insultingly to Makarov. That's it. The rest of the boys, standing behind Jason, kept echoing. So that's the case, don't you want to say more? If that's the case, then I'll ask again. Little devils, I'll give you a chance to tell what you know now, otherwise. The moment Makarov's words fell, his body became extremely huge, like a mountain, his face was gloomy, his eyes shone with golden light, and the terrifying golden magic power scattered into the air following Makarov's words. Let the air become extremely viscous, depressing. I don't think you guys want to know what this else is. Then now, little devils, let's start choosing. Makarov was condescending, as if he was looking at a group of ants, and spoke in a cold voice to the group of Magisters called the Noisy Second Hand. Monster. Humans have become monsters. Brother Jason, this guy is indeed a genuine top 10 Magister. The clamoring mages of the second hand looked at the sky-penetrating giant in front of them, threw away the weapons in their hands, then knelt down in unison, kowtowed to Makarov, and shouted, "We answer truthfully, please let us go." 5 minutes later. So, your guild picked up a devil's egg, right? After seeing the power of the demon Daliola created by Zirf, you plan to hatch this demon egg and domesticate it into the combat power of your guild, so that your guild can become the strongest guild in Ishgar. Is that so? With his hands behind his back, Makarov asked indifferently to the group of Magisters who had chosen to surrender but were still beaten up. That's it. At this moment, Jason, the majestic cadre of the Magisters Guild's noisy second hand 5 minutes ago, has completely lost his arrogant demeanor just now. He was kneeling in front of Makarov with a bruised nose and a swollen face. Makarov answered everything truthfully. Just because when Makarov hit him just now, he hit him the hardest. Idiot, the strength of the guild will not become stronger because of the joining of a demon. The reason why the guild is strong is because of the bond between the guild members. You bunch of ignorant brats. If the demon gets out of control, do you know how much disaster it will bring to this world? After Makarov heard Jason's words, the anger in his heart continued to burn. While speaking, he punched the noisy second-hand guild leader named Jason on the head. It hurts. Jason felt the pain in his head, tears slowly flowed from his eyes, and saw a swollen cell emanating from his head at a speed visible to the naked eye. President, since we have heard such a thing, we can't ignore it. Yuen flew to Makarov's side, and whispered to Makarov. It is true that this idiot guild cannot be left alone. If these ignorant brats are allowed to mess around, it might bring disaster to this continent. Makarov looked helpless. Little devils, now I will give you a chance to make amends. Take us to your guild immediately. We must deal with your devil's eggs. Makarov ordered to the Magisters in front of him. Obey. At this moment, the group of Magisters who had been completely tamed by Makarov did not dare to say a word to Makarov. With the guidance of this group of noisy Miaojun Magisters, everyone soon arrived not far from the noisy Miaojun guild. It was a huge building that looked like an alchemy workshop. Gentlemen, our guild has arrived. The building in front of us is our guild of the noisy second hand. The magister named Jason stood in front of Yuen and the others, bending over, looking flattering. President, look at other people's guilds. In terms of appearance, they are all more impressive than our guild. Yuen looked at the huge building of the noisy second hand, and whispered to Makarov. What do you know? Our guild is in a retro style, and that house has a history of hundreds of years. Don't underestimate it, our old house. After hearing what Egwin said, Makarov blushed, his face was serious, and he began to flicker. It's not a matter of insufficient funds. Do you think I don't want to expand or renovate? If you didn't let me worry so much, I would have already saved enough money to renovate the guild. While talking, Makarov gritted his teeth, tears kept streaming from his eyes, he seemed to think of something that made him very sad. In short, the devil's egg is inside, right? Yuen ignored Makarov, who was secretly sad. He stretched his muscles and looked at the noisy second-hand guild in the distance, his eyes slightly fixed. At the moment, inside the noisy second hand of the Magister's guild, in front of a huge and pitch-black object that looks like a round ball, there is a little girl with her eyes closed and her hands clasped together. She looks about 8 or 9 years old. At this moment, the black ball is being pushed by the little girl, constantly squirming. Listening carefully, you can vaguely hear the sound of thump, plop, heart beating from inside the spherical object. Yes, the thing that looks like a black ball in front of you is the devil's egg accidentally picked up by the noisy second hand. Nano, you have to work hard. Think about your parents. As long as you can hatch the things inside, you can reunite with your family. Behind the girl, there is a stilt-footed, short stature, with one black eye and one white eye, who looks like some kind of strange Dharma magister. At this moment, he was looking at the girl wretchedly, constantly encouraging the girl to use her own magic, just because this little girl named Nano had awakened a magic that could accelerate the rapid growth of the devil's egg. While obtaining the devil's egg, he also found a little girl who has the ability to accelerate the growth of the devil's corruption. In the eyes of this magister who looks like Dharma, it is simply the arrangement of heaven. In the dark, everything is directed by fate. The girl is in great pain. On the one hand, she is anxious to see her parents, and on the other hand, she rejects the devil's egg. She instinctively feels that this thing in front of her must not be hatched. Once she successfully hatches it, it will bring endless threats to the surrounding towns. Boom! Just when the girl was crying in pain, accompanied by a roar, the noisy second hand of the entire Magister's guild shook tremendously. Earthquake! The Magister who looked like Bodhidharma frowned, and he kept observing the surroundings with his black and white eyes. Boom! Just at the moment when this wretched-looking Magister looked puzzled, the ceiling of the entire noisy second-hand guild was violently lifted by a mysterious force. The girl, the devil's egg, and the Magister who looked like Dharma were directly exposed to the sun's rays. Found it! At the same time, a soft voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. Who? This Magister who looked like Bodhidharma raised his head when he heard the movement, and then he was blinded by the sudden sunlight. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and vaguely, he seemed to see a young man who didn't look tall but had a handsome face, standing in the sky. And the person who was said to be alive just now is this child who can stand in the sky out of thin air. In addition to the devil's egg, other targets have been discovered. Yuen looked at the devil's egg in the room, the petite girl, and the wretched-looking Magister, and spoke softly to the people behind her. Every time I see Brother Yuen making a move, I always feel extremely exaggerated. Gray and Leon looked at each other, with cold sweat streaming down their foreheads. They still remembered that they were still discussing how to find the devil's egg in the huge building in front of them. The next second, Yuen gave a solution, that is, just demolish the building in front of you. This is how fairy tale works. Boom! Makarov, who was outside the building, heard Yuen's words, and blasted the wall of the guild in front of him with a punch, and led Ulu and the others directly towards the room where the devil's egg was placed. Who are you? In the room, the Magister who looked like Bodhidharma, looking at the guilds that destroyed him one after another, asked Makarov and others nervously as he swaggered in. Don't you know that this is the site of our noisy second hand? Or are you planning to be destroyed by the great Mr. Nez Damas, who is the president of the noisy second hand guild? This man who looks like some kind of dharma is none other than Nez Damas, the president of the noisy second hand of the Magisters Guild. Hey, I'm fine now. Before Nez Damas, who had enough prestige in several nearby towns, said, a beautiful figure had already arrived at the little girl whose eyes were streaming tears, and picked her up. Gently stroking the girl's back, constantly comforting the girl. You are. The girl stopped crying when she heard the voice, and looked at the beautiful woman with short black hair who was holding her in her arms. Her eyes were full of curiosity. We are the ones who came to save you, and we will take you back to see Mom and Dad right away. That beautiful woman with short black hair is Ulu, holding the girl in her arms at this moment. Her eyes are full of maternal love. The little girl in front of him reminded Ulu of his own child. Didn't you hear my lord's words? Nez Damas looked at Uru, who ignored her, feeling that he was humiliated, and immediately formed a magic circle with his hands. He planned to teach the woman in front of him a lesson. Shut up, you scumbag who snatches other people's children. Ulu doesn't talk nonsense, raising his hand as like an ice shape. Boom. In an instant, the arrogant Nez Damas was frozen in place by Uru along with the magic he released. The gap in strength between the two made Nez Damas even incapable of resisting. What happened? The president was killed. Go, destroy this group of intruders. At the same time, with the successive movements, the Magisters of the noisy second hand were finally alarmed. Around Yi Wen and the others, the Magisters of the noisy second hand swarmed in from all directions. Sculpture of Ice White Rose Garden. Ulu looked at the dozens of Magisters surrounded by everyone, with a calm expression, and put his hands in the posture of ice modeling magic. In the next moment, he directly frozen all the dragons, and at the same time, completely removed the noise of the noisy second hand. Magisters Guild. Giant Fist. As for the Magisters that Uru missed, all the fists enlarged by Makarov were sent flying. Ice-shaped gun. Ice-shaped swallow. At the same time, Gray and Leon were also manipulating their ice shapes, constantly attacking the group of Magisters. A few minutes later, Call. Wulu looked at the ruins in front of her, and slowly let out a breath of foul air. The broken things that were suppressed in her heart finally dissipated a lot as she vented. Forehead. This kid Wulu, like the other little devils, is also a master of house demolition. Makarov looked at the collapsed buildings destroyed by Uru's modeling magic, and fell into deep thought. He always felt that Uru was also demolished. You guys, don't be too arrogant. Don't think that this will kill our noisy second hand. We have a devil's egg. When the devil comes out, we will definitely wipe out all of you. Have you heard of Daliola? It's the Daliola who wiped out dozens of towns. Devil, it's not a mere existence that humans can fight against. Just as everyone wiped out the noisy second hand in an instant, a Magister who was killed by Makarov's punch and lying on the ground with the noisy second hand sneered at Yiwen and the others, saying cruel words. Destroy evil. After hearing what the Magister said, Yi Wen came to the devil's egg with a cold face, and then she used a move to destroy evil, Gravity Wave. Boom. Following Yi Wen's magic, the devil's egg exploded instantly, turning into countless pieces. What? The Magister who spoke harshly before, saw the scene where Yi Wen was destroying the devil's egg with a wave of her hand. Her eyes widened, and she was speechless for a long time. Huh, what did you just say? After destroying the devil's egg, Yi Wen looked at the Magister who spoke harshly. After hearing Yi Wen's question, the Magister swallowed and opened his mouth slightly. However, the Magister could not utter a word except for an ego. By the way, the Daliola you mentioned earlier was the one who was attacked by Brother Yi Wen. Gray and Leon looked at the Magister who couldn't say a word, exchanged glances, then walked up to the Magister and spoke with a smile. What? Hearing this, the Magister trembled in fright. At this moment, he had lost his ability to speak. Gray, Leon, stop talking nonsense with these people. It's time for us to go. Yi Wen looked at Gray and Leon, who were still standing in the ruins of the second-hand guild, and shouted. Okay, Brother Yi Wen, here we come. Upon hearing this, Gray and Leon immediately ran towards Egwene. The next step is to send the child to a nearby town to reunite with his parents. At the same time, let the idiots of the Magic Senate send these idiots to prison. Yi Wen looked at the wreckage all over the floor, as well as the noisy second-hand Magisters frozen into ice sculptures, and preached to everyone. That's it. Makarov nodded slightly. Next, Yuen and her group successfully arrived at a nearby town and sent the little girl Nanuo back home. Seeing the girl reunited with her family, everyone smiled knowingly, and then left silently. There seems to be a train near here. Why don't we make trains directly? After Yuen found out that there was a train in the town she was in, she asked everyone if they wanted to change their mode of transportation. Although Dubai's speed was very fast, it was not suitable for driving on the road after all. In order not to scare other people, she could only take the mountain road and kept climbing over the mountain. In fact, if you think about it this way, it is not as convenient as the train. It is good. Makarov and the others nodded slightly, agreeing to Yuen's proposal. Half an hour. Accompanied by the roar of the train, Yuen and the others took the train towards the west. Outside the train station, countless passengers watched in horror at a huge 5-meter-tall white bear, standing upright like a human being, waving its wide bare paw, saying goodbye to Yuen and the others. If you look carefully, you can still see the tears from the corners of the white bear's eyes. On the train, Yuen, Makarov and the others were sitting on the large sofa. Although the 2 rows of sofas facing each other can usually only seat 4 people, because of Makarov and the others, there are a total of 4 people here. For the sake of children, it is very spacious to sit up. Note: the 4 children refer to Egwene, Gray, Leon and Makarov. Is this the train? Gray, look at the changing scenery. Why didn't I think this snow-white mountain was so beautiful before? Leon and Gray were leaning against the window, constantly looking out, admiring the beautiful snow scenery outside. Although they grew up in the north, they were already used to seeing the snow-white color, but seeing it from the high-speed train, it was different from seeing it on weekdays. The scenery is completely different. These 2 children, Ulu looked at Gray and Leon, who were sitting opposite her, lying on the edge of the windowsill, looking out constantly. Their eyes were full of doting, as if they were looking at their own children generally. When Ulu saw the excitement of Gray and Leon at the moment, she also felt in her heart that her decision to leave the town with her 2 children and go to the west where magic was more active was absolutely the right choice. Only after getting out of this small world where I am, and coming to a bigger stage, can I see how vast this world is. It's really good. Makarov looked at Ulu, Leon, and Gray with a smile. His heart was full of joy. He also gained a lot from this trip. He immediately gained a top combat power and 2 good seedlings. Sure enough, Egwene can bring good luck to their fairy tale. Ah, Yuen yawned self-consciously. As the train continued to move westward, Yuen faintly felt the magic power of some idiot in her keen and powerful perception. Is that guy around here too? Yuen kept showing her knowledge, and muttered to herself. Well, may I ask that you are Mr. Makarov, right? Just as Yuen and the others sat lazily on the train, enjoying the rare moment of rest. Accompanied by a slightly hoarse voice with some vicissitudes, a middle-aged man in a black coat, holding a dilapidated briefcase in his hand, who looked like he was in his 60s or 70s, walked to Rock with kindness. Beside Wen and the others, he took off his hat and saluted Makarov. You are Mr. Toki Anderbar, please sit down. After Makarov heard the voice, he turned his head slightly. When he saw the appearance of this middle-aged man, a look of surprise flashed across his face, and he immediately got off his seat, and asked the middle-aged man to elderly men take their seats. As for Makarov, who had left his seat, he ran up to Yi Wen who was sitting opposite him, and said softly, Yi Wen, make room for me. Ah, Egwene sighed, and squeezed in the direction of Ulu beside her, leaving a seat for Makarov. However, because of Ulu's slender figure, and the fact that Yuen and Makarov were not very big, sitting in a row with the 3 of them wouldn't look too crowded. Then I would be more respectful than obedient. The middle-aged man named Tochi Anderba smiled at everyone and sat opposite Makarov, where Makarov was originally sitting. Gray and Leon, who were originally sitting on the same side as Makarov, also sat down obediently after seeing a stranger taking their seats, carefully looking at the man named Toki Anderbar next to them. It's better than being so cautious. Toki Anderba just smiled at Gray and Leon, then turned around, set his eyes on Egwene, and said, It must be this is Yi Wen, who is famous in the mainland and has the name of the Pole Star, right? You are indeed a good-looking talent. I heard that you like to hit people with meteorites summoned by real celestial body magic. Do you know if it is true or not? Like hitting people with meteorites. We testify. Gray and Leon looked at each other, then kept nodding, while shouting inwardly. It's all just rumors. I've always been a peace-loving person, and I rarely use that level of magic. After listening to Tochi Anderbar's words, Egwene shook her head with a light smile, and at the same time glared at it. After hearing Torch Anderbar's question, she kept nodding as if to imply something to Gray and Lee. Hold head high. Forehead. In an instant, Gray and Leon calmed down like a mouse seeing a cat. Haha, Mr. Makarov, the kids in your guild are really interesting. Tochi Anderbar looked at Egwene, who exuded a faint murderous look, and Gray and Leon, who turned their heads to look at the window, trembling and sweating profusely, and laughed lightly. As long as you like it. Makarov looked at Tochi Anderbar and smiled cautiously. In short, I still hope that your guild can act a little lighter. After all, sometimes, what your guild does is difficult even for us. Tochi Anderba said, from his seat standing up. He smiled and nodded at everyone. Then I wish you all a pleasant journey, and I'm getting off the bus too. You go slowly. Makarov nodded lightly at Tochi Anderba, watched him go to other compartments, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa President, was that man just now a very strong magister? Could it be, is it also one of the 10 holy magisters? Not long after Tochi Anderba left, Leon and Gray pulled Makarov and kept asking. Well, what should I say? Makarov looked a little hesitant, as if he was not sure how to describe Tochi Anderbar. It's not about being strong or not. In terms of strength, that old gentleman is probably not an opponent of any of us here, right? But in terms of power and fame, it will be very troublesome. Tochi Anderba, one of the members of the Magic Council now, and also the warden of the Magic Prison Blackbox. Probably one of the people our president doesn't want to meet. Just when Makarov was hesitating, Yiwen explained the situation. Mr. Member of the Magic Council. Gray's eyes widened. He didn't expect that the kind man just now would be a member of the Magic Senate. Along the way, Gray and Leon listened to Makarov complain about how vicious and inhumane the members of the Magic Senate were, but now it seems the other party seemed to be just an ordinary person, not as scary as Makarov said. Or the warden of the Magic Prison. Leon was also shocked by the identity of Tochi Anderbar. Whether it was the identity of the other party's prison warden or the identity of a member of the Magic Council, they were all existences that could shock the magic world, and the two identities came together. One can imagine the rights and status of the other party. But what Leon paid more attention to was that this person with such power was dressed so plainly, and the briefcase in his hand also looked like it had been used for a long time. So this is the troublesome place. Fortunately, Mr. Anderbar is a neutral faction, otherwise, there will be a fight between the prison and us fairy tale. Makarov kept rubbing his hands back and forth, looking hesitant, just as Leon and Gray said. The other party was not only a member of the Magic Council, but also the warden of the Magic Prison. Although he insisted, the other party didn't dare to do anything to him, the top 10 holy magisters, but he still had to give the face that should be given. Grandpa President, aren't we from the Guangming Guild? Gray and Leon were shocked after hearing Makarov's words. Even they could understand that the Magic Council and the Magic Prison are organizations that specifically target criminals. In short, there are many reasons. Makarov didn't try to explain. He thought that after Gray and the others arrived at Fairy Tale, they would probably be able to understand what kind of magic guild Fairy Tale is, and understand the many reasons he said. Boom! While Makarov and the others were chatting, the train suddenly trembled with a roar. Style of ice. Immediately, Wooloo activated the modeling magic, freezing the entire train carriage, and fixing the carriage where Yiwen was in place. What happened? Makarov frowned, looking around suspiciously. Gray and Leon were equally alert. Perhaps the enemy of the Mr. Congressman has come to seek revenge. Only Yiwen calmly used her knowledge to watch a group of uninvited guests from the Dark Magic Guild come to seek revenge on Tochi Anderbar, and then kidnap the other party, preaching very calmly. Now, I'm in big trouble. Hearing this, Makarov's expression flickered, showing a hint of panic. The members of the Magic Senate were in danger, but it was a big deal. No, isn't this an opportunity? Egwene shook her head after hearing Makarov's words. If Congressman Tochi Anderbar can be pulled from the neutral faction to our side, I think our situation in the Magic Senate will be much better in the future. Yiwen was meticulous in her thoughts. In fact, he had already observed the magisters of the Dark Guild who were attacking the train. When the other party came to the nearby mountain in that strange vehicle, he had already noticed that the other party even the opponent's magic power and number of people are clear, but he doesn't care about it. It makes sense. Makarov, who was still extremely anxious at first, lit up after hearing what Egwene said. Wait, no, Egwene, could it be that you were the one who kidnapped Counselor Torchy Anderbar this time? Immediately afterwards, a few drops of sweat appeared on Makarov's forehead, and he was afraid that Egwene would embark on a wrong path from now on. Of course not. Yuen shook her head. All of this can only be regarded as a coincidence. In fact, even if they don't care about this matter, Toki Enderbar will be unharmed, because in Egwene's perception, there is a fool who is currently being held in Torchy Enderbar's custody, yes, in the prison about 2 or 3 kilometers away from this station. Then I'm relieved. There are some things we can't do. That's the bottom line. After hearing what Egwene said, Makarov heaved a sigh of relief, and incidentally educated everyone present. Don't worry, President. Also, if you don't chase after me, it will be too late. Yuen pointed to the magic vehicle taking off outside the window, and preached. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up, we have to perform well. Makarov stared at the magic vehicle flying directly into the sky outside the window, his eyes widened. Even he rarely saw such a thing. Everyone, sit still. As Yuen said, she patted the carriage under the feet of everyone. Boom! Suddenly, accompanied by a roar, the carriage flew into the sky. Follow the magic device in front of you closely. At the same time, that looks like a chariot-like flying magic device. I'm affirming once again that it's still too late to let me go. As long as I let go, I will treat today's incident as if it didn't happen. But if you continue to be obsessed, wait until the news reaches the council. Other congressmen, I will definitely not let it go. I will definitely send top magisters to attack you, even the magisters of the Holy 10 level. It is not impossible. Tochi Anderba looked seriously at the group of magisters who were all dressed and looked the same in front of him. These people belong to the Wudiaochao family of the Dark Guild, and they were all murderers who were being held in the magic prison at the moment. The children, and the purpose of this group of people is self-evident, naturally to release their father. We know what you are saying is very true, but please forgive us for being difficult to obey, as long as we can release our father, even if we go through fire and water. The head of the Gojohashi family, who looked like the eldest son, spoke coldly to Tochi Anderba. Troublesome. However, since the matter is such a big mess, Mr. Makarov will always notice that as long as Mr. Makarov takes action. Tochi Anderba looked a little panicked, and now his mind was pinned on Makarov and the others he met on the train. It seems to have arrived. Not long after, the eldest son of the Wudiaochao family showed a slight smile. He pulled Tochi Anderba to the deck of the magic device. Outside there was a huge black cube floating in the sky. That was the magician. Prison Black Skavo X. Stop whoever comes. As Wu Tiaochao's family approached, countless black square guards approached the crowd, and issued bursts of warning sounds at the same time. If you don't want your director to die, then please open the gate of the prison. The eldest son of the Wudiaochao family pinched Tochi Anderba's neck with one hand, raised it high, and aimed at the aircraft. What? It's Director Toki. The guards inside the square looked terrified after seeing Tochi Anderbar's face clearly. Then the prison door was opened directly. Thank you for your cooperation. The eldest son of Wudiaochao raised his mouth and flew in with the body. Not long after, when everyone's eyes were on Wudiaochao's family, an ordinary car also flew into the prison. Inside the huge black cube are small cubes. According to the sentence and the degree of danger, the jailers will imprison the magisters in the small cubes according to the law. And the father of the Wudiaochao family is one of the most dangerous prisoners. Please go to the central prison tower. The eldest son of Wudiaochao held Tochi Anderba's neck in his hands, and ordered everyone in a cold voice. Soon Wudiaochao's family confronted the prison guards. Please release Mr. Torch. As for Dorum, we will release it. The prison warden Gorogu Photo, who was holding a huge key, looked at the Gojohashi family with a serious expression. No, you can't let him go. Tochi Anderba looked at Guluogu seriously. As the warden of the prison, how could he allow someone to escape from the prison he was guarding? I'm sorry, Mr. Anderba, although I know this is wrong, but I can't do it. Because for us, you are like a father. As Gu Luogu said, he waved the key, and a small black box floated over in an instant and then opened it gently. In an instant, a tall and strong man appeared in front of everyone. He stretched his muscles and bones, then looked at his children and laughed loudly, ha ha ha. Nice job my boys, everything went according to plan. Father, all the magisters in guild battle robes saluted this strong man respectfully. Now we have fulfilled the agreement and released your father, you can go away. But I think you will be arrested again soon, cherish your time outside. If you come back this time, don't even think about it, out. Gu Luogu looked at the strong man and preached indifferently. What, Watcher, are you thinking too much? We're here this time, but we don't plan to go out. Hearing this, the strong man tied the weapon his son handed over, and looked at Gu Luogu coldly. What? Gu Luogu panicked when he heard the words, he thought of something bad. This huge fortress will belong to our Wujiuqiao family from now on. The brawny man showed a ferocious smile. He had been planning since he was captured, planning to capture the magic prison Blackskavo X. That's it. At the moment when the strong man laughed, Makarov and others descended from the sky accompanied by shocking magical powers. You are. The strong man looked at Makarov, especially the badge on Makarov's chest, and his pupils shrank suddenly. He had heard about the Holy 10 Magisters. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.